Welcome to Classic Trials. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we make sense of the law one bite at a time. In this series, we observe and analyze the play-by-play of some of the biggest trials that have shaped the public consciousness of the American judicial system. In this season, we're working our way through the case of California v. Erik and Lyle Menendez. Growing up in Princeton, New Jersey, and then Beverly Hills, California, these young men had everything they could ever want, or so it seemed, until one night on August 20th, 1989, they approached Jose and Kitty Menendez with newly purchased shotguns. Put on trial for murdering their own parents, they claimed self-defense, arguing they were terrorized in their own home by abusive parents until they could take no more. Which argument is more convincing? Come join and see for yourself. Hello. Happy Monday, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are coming from. I hope you are having a wonderful day. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. And if not, I hope this week gets better for you. So we are back in the studio once again with Holmes over here, Indy over here. Sorry for being a little bit late. I got caught up in some other stuff and I looked up and I was like, oh my God, I have Classic Trials. We've got to get going. So anyhow, today we have more Erik Menendez testimony. We started that last week. We ended Lyle's cross-examination, redirect, and then we heard from Detective Zoller again. And then we started Erik Menendez's testimony. And if you guys were here last week, you know that it was already rough from the beginning. Basically, they just got right into what Erik Menendez thinks is the reason for why his parents have died. And he says it's because I told Lyle about the abuse. And then they got into what exactly the abuse was and all the different types. So it was difficult right from the very beginning, and I anticipate it will continue to be difficult. So we've got of course a wonderful swoop for when we need the a little bit of a break. Here it is. Wonderfully made by Draco Amy. Thank you so much. So anyways, we've got that. We also will have some trigger warnings in the chat. We've already got it here. Here we go. Trigger warning: if you need help, step away for a while or catch the next stream. Look after yourself. Hugs for all those who need or want it. 100% agree. I anticipate we're going to get into all the different kinds of abuse here in this testimony today. So we're still in direct by Leslie Abramson. She's still directing, doing the direct examination of Erik. So just wanted to put that out there. We'll be flashing that up there from time to time for new people that come in. So to everyone who is watching live or on replay, welcome. And to all those that are in the chat, thank you so much for being in the chat. Everybody that's just watching and lurking, I appreciate that too. If you could, at some point, I would appreciate it if you could hit the like button. It does help us with the YouTube algorithm gods, as always. So, all right. Is that everything that I wanted to talk about? I think that is. I think I got everything. I don't think I forgot anything. I hope. There's always a chance that I've forgotten something. Here's a question, David Ponce. So I'm not new to the channel, but I am new to this case. Could you summarize what this case is mainly about? Okay, so the intro to this live stream kind of sums up like what the case is about. But basically, Erik and Lyle Menendez in the late 1980s, they shot their parents, and this was a shock to the entire country. How these kids from Beverly Hills could end up shooting their parents with shotguns. So the prosecution framed this case as two wealthy kids who wanted to kill their parents for the money. The defense, however, says, no. This is a case of two kids who had been abused throughout their entire childhood. We're talking psychological abuse, emotional abuse, some physical abuse, as well as SA, that kind of abuse by primarily the father. But Lyle also says that his mother also had this weird Oedipal relationship with him as well. So basically what it was, Lyle was already in college. Erik was about to go to college at UCLA. He had wanted to go elsewhere across the country, but his father said, nope, you're going to UCLA. And oh, by the way, you're going to stay living at home, which to him meant that the abuse would continue because he was still being abused at that time, even through his senior year of high school. So everything kind of came to a head when when Erik told Lyle, the younger brother told the older brother, that he was still being abused and he just didn't know what to do. Lyle tried to address it to his parents to try to say, like, you need to stop, because Jose had also abused Lyle, but he stopped when he was 6 years old, 8 years old, something like that. And he had no idea that Lyle had been continually abused throughout his entire childhood, basically once Jose had stopped abusing Lyle. That triggered a whole series of events. According to the defense, they said that basically the reaction from their parents was very different than what it had been previously. Which before this point, any amount of like, what's the word for it? Like, if they had complained to him about any little thing that he was doing, if they had tried to stand up to him for any little thing, his response was to sometimes get violent with them, beat them, or in Erik's case, to use SA against him. But in this case, when Lyle came forward to his parents about Erik continuing to be abused through his senior year of high school, he also threatened to tell the police. He threatened to tell other people about the whole thing. And this is a family that really, really, really cared about image, like cared to an extent that was different than most families, I think. Now, Jose's reaction this time, instead of getting immediately violent, immediately, like ragey, he got very quiet, which to Lyle and Erik was terrifying, because they said, what is he doing now? And so based on his response and based on Kitty's response, their mother, they thought that their parents were about to kill them, because they thought that their parents cared more about their image than about their children being alive. So this, like I said, triggered a series of events, and they thought that their parents were about to kill them. And that's why they purchased the shotguns, was for their own protection, they say. And then they said that they, in the moment before they decided to bring out those shotguns in the home, they thought that their parents were literally about to kill them. They also had not been getting sleep. There's all kinds of circumstances around this. So that's basically my TLDR, the best TLDR that I can provide on the spot. I'm sure that other folks in the chat can also provide other details that I must have missed with my flyby of like what this case is about and what the two sides are saying. So at this point in the trial now, we are talking about we're still in. Well, we're in the defense's case in chief. So we started with the prosecution side. Now we're in the defense. We have gone through Lyle's testimony, which was like quite long. We are now in part 2 of Erik's testimony. I anticipate this is going to take a very long time. And yeah, so there's going to be a lot that we go through here. Okay, and I'm definitely leaving out plenty of other stuff that is also salacious and interesting and fascinating, like the psychologist that Erik had confessed to, and all this other stuff, and all of there's like a whole mini trial around Dr. Oziel. So okay, so that's all I'll say about all of that. But this is basically a summary of like some of the high points. And yeah, okay. That's about it. I think that's, if I go on, I'll get into all kinds of different weeds. So, all right, with that, I hope that sort of gave you a little bit of a summary on where we are so far at this point. And yes, Brittany Chanel, of course, always trigger warnings. We've got it here. I've got it saved here. I'll pull it up on the screen from time to time. Yeah, that's about it. So, be Be prepared. Okay, let's get into it now. We are back with Erik on the stand here. All right. And okay, here we go. We're all queued up. And sorry, guys, Indy left us. She didn't really leave us. She's just on the floor now. And Holmes is somewhere. I don't know. He may have actually left us, but he'll be back. They'll both be back at some point. Okay, let's begin.
The case with anyone, don't form any final opinions about it, and we'll resume at 20 after.
Mr. Menendez, in addition to telling you what your career was going to be and what you were going to study, did your father say anything about how and where you would live after college and graduate school?
Yes.
And did we not get there yet? I guess because I took us right to the timestamp that we stopped at. I may have given a spoiler from previously, from like clicking through to make sure like where the timestamps are and stuff. So I apologize if I just ruined that for you guys. Anyway.
And what did he say about that?
We were going to live in Florida.
Who's we?
Lyle, my mother, I, and my father.
And in what kind of setup, if he described such a thing?
I'm not sure if he described the setup then. I know what the setup was, but I don't know if I know that from after or before. I know that it was going to be on some sort of an island and a big house with other houses, but I don't remember.
You heard your brother testify about your father talking about purchasing a large area of land, a compound of houses.
Yes.
Did you know about those plans before your parents were killed?
Yes.
You just don't know if your father mentioned it in that conversation?
Well, no, I knew that we were going to move to Florida. I don't know if I knew the setup before or after.
Before or after what?
Okay, for context, the question here is about where they were going to live later on in life, because I think his father had talked about a potential political career, and that he wanted to run for politics, that he wanted Lyle to run for politics at some point. And so I guess moving to Florida was part of that. And so now Erik has just testified that and I think Lyle testified to this as well, that Jose had this plan that they would all basically live on this compound together and be one horribly unhappy family, all of them living together.
Mr. Menendez.
They died.
Okay. Now, after this breakfast discussion with your father, did you go to your mother and say anything to her about, gee, Dad's got my whole life planned, I'm unhappy with it, to do something?
No.
Were you ever able to go to your mother for that kind of intervention?
No.
Why not?
Because you just didn't do that. My mom wasn't going to help.
How did you know that?
Because she had never helped before.
Were there other things your father had decided that you didn't like or didn't want to go along with?
Yes.
Had you ever shared your desires with your mother?
I'm confused.
Had you ever told your mother, I'd like to do this, Dad doesn't want me to do this?
Maybe when I was real young, but not once I got to be a teenager.
Did she ever go?
See, that's also a really good moment here. This is a good sign right here that as far as Erik has been prepared as a witness. I know we talked about this a lot with Lyle being prepared. There were some moments, especially on cross-examination, where I was like, he's holding his ground pretty well. He's indicating when he's definitely listening. He's definitely listening, and he's paying attention to objections and things like that. And when he's confused about something, he's saying he doesn't understand, and he's forcing rather than just answering what he thinks that the attorney asking the questions wants to hear or is looking for, rather than having to guess, he's asking, like, if you mean this, then it's that. If you mean that, then it's that, things like that. So here, this is good. There's a good early indication here that Erik has been prepared well in the fact that he said, I'm confused, instead of just trying to guess what Leslie meant by that question. So it signaled to her, ask in another way, and this is good. This is good. It also indicates a fairly strong relationship between him and Leslie as well, that he's not intimidated. He's not afraid to look stupid to her or anything like that.
Go against Dad
No,
concerning anything having to do with you?
no, she never went against Dad.
Did she ever go against Dad concerning anything having to do with Lyle and his life?
No.
Now, was there another discussion with your father within the week after your return from the tournament in Kalamazoo?
Yes.
And do you recall where this one took place?
This took place in the study in the Beverly Hills house.
When you refer to the study, could you give us a further description of that room?
It was a paneled room.
You popped the mic.
It was a paneled room similar to these panels. It had a wooden floor, and there were 2 chairs and a sofa and a table, 2 tables in there.
That's not the same room as the den.
No.
The den is where your parents were killed.
Yes.
Also, this is another thing that's kind of neither here nor there, but she also indicated when he popped the mic. Like, this is also something that's very interesting because this is a judge who gets very annoyed very quickly when a witness is not speaking loud enough or is speaking too loudly or is too close to the mic and is popping the mic. You know what I mean? So I have a feeling that Leslie is saying these things like, hey, you just popped the mic, to like give him an awareness and bring him back to like where he is and his relation with how he's projecting himself and whatnot, so that he doesn't have to hear it from the judge. That's what I'm thinking is what she's doing. It's a lot easier for him to hear it from Leslie, probably, even if she says it in a somewhat severe tone. It seems like there's probably, because there's more trust between them, and I can understand if he maybe even feels intimidated by Judge Weisberg. I would expect that anyway at this point, having seen what we've seen of him reacting to other witnesses. And obviously Erik has been there in court every single day of this trial because he's one of the defendants.
And what was the topic? What was the basic topics of discussion in the conversation you had with your father in the study?
What courses I was going to take at UCLA.
And was this you telling him what courses you wanted to take?
No, he had all my course sheets lined up on the coffee table, and had his writings and his papers.
What do you mean by his papers?
He's also now noticing the popping himself. You can see he just popped the mic and then he kind of leaned back a little bit and then said papers again. Sorry, I don't know why I'm so focused on that right now, but you can tell that he's uncomfortable. He's trying to find his groove. He's trying to like figure out like, how to sit smoothly, where to sit, how to sit, all of this kind of stuff, which can be a very intimidating thing for any witness, but especially a criminal defendant.
Well, he had, I guess, written out different courses I could take, and then alternative courses to that, and what I would be taking in my second year, and basically how I was going to line up my college years and what courses I was going to take.
And did he have some materials from UCLA there that told him what courses were available, what courses were offered?
Yeah, he had all the course sheets, all the. I never saw them, so I don't know. But I mean, I saw them when I was in that room with him. What
do you mean you never saw them? You were going to be the student, weren't you?
Yes, I was going to be the student.
And no one ever gave them to you to look over?
No, my dad had them.
And the papers, you say, these are things that had his handwriting on them?
No, some had his handwriting on papers, and then the other ones with UCLA form sheets and course sheets explaining what all the different courses you could take in your first semester, I guess second semester, in your second year, and so on and so on.
Okay. So he had mapped it all out.
Yes.
And he was telling you what you were going to take.
Yeah, we were talking about, I guess it was orientation or registration. I'm not sure if the two were combined.
What is registration?
When you sign up for the courses.
Okay, go on.
And he was telling me that we had a problem.
We had a problem?
Yes, that's how he would talk.
Okay, and what was the problem?
He said that the problem was that the parents could not be there.
Back up from the mic.
He said that the parents could not be there at registration.
That was the problem?
Yes, and so the problem was that if one of the courses that he had lined up for me was filled, that I would have to pick the alternate courses. And so he wanted me to go to a payphone and and call him and tell him what courses were available and not. And that's why he had his alternative course sheets.
So he expected you to telephone him from registration so that you could tell him what courses you were taking, or he could tell you what alternative to take. Which was it?
Well, I could tell him I could tell him what courses I could take. And
Were available,
and therefore he would be able to tell me which courses to sign up for.
So he was going to pick which classes that you registered for.
Yes.
So this again goes to the idea of coercive control, that even at this point in his life, similar to Lyle when he went off to Princeton, his father was choosing his courses for him and basically saying, like, this is what you're going to take because this is what I want you to take. Never mind what he himself found interesting. It's whatever dad wants. This is what I have to do. Yeah, this is going to the control element, which goes to the overall idea that they couldn't just leave. They couldn't just, run away and be off on their own and figure out their own life starting from the ground up. They couldn't just do that because they had never been prepared to be adults. They'd never been prepared, even in the educational world, like to study on their own and to do their own work on their own. And then also in the working world, we heard that from Lyle when he had that one summer or that 1 year in between when he kind of took some time off from Princeton and he tried working for his father, and he just was completely unprepared for the position that they had put him in. And clearly he was there just because of nepotism, because of his father's role. And there was absolutely nothing that he could do to be successful in that particular position because he wasn't prepared for it. So this is all kind of going to that whole idea that they were trapped. They were trapped, despite the fact that they are technically adults, both of them at the point at which they killed their parents. Neither of them have the ability to actually think for themselves, fend for themselves, create something for themselves, and they are completely dependent upon their parents in every single aspect of their lives, down to who it is that they're going to end up marrying, where they're going to end up living as adults with their ultimate families later on down the line. All of these things have been decided by their parents, and there's just absolutely no way for them to decide, otherwise. That's the presentation and the framework given by the defense. Now, whether or not you agree with that is up to interpretation. I know we've got folks that are citing more at the prosecution, folks that are citing more at the defense. I know folks that are more in the middle saying, there's horrible abuse that happened. But, I couldn't do a full acquittal. Now, remember, we've got multiple charges here. There's charges for murder for each of these defendants for each of the victims. So four charges of murder, 4 charges of voluntary manslaughter, and then also 4 charges of involuntary manslaughter. So voluntary manslaughter, just as a quick reminder, being that they are, it's the idea that they had a reasonable but mistaken belief. No, that's involuntary manslaughter. Voluntary manslaughter is that they had a sincere but unreasonable belief that their lives were in danger, that they truly believed that their parents were going to kill them if they did not act first. But that it's unreasonable to believe that. As an objective observer, you can look at that and say, I don't think that's reasonable, but I think that they believed it. That's voluntary manslaughter. Involuntary manslaughter would be a reasonable but mistaken belief, for example. Okay. Anyway, let's continue back on. But basically, my point is that all of this is to get to the idea that there was coercive control by these parents, and it's still continuing right up to the day that everything unfolded as it did.
And what else did he say about how you were going to deal with college in that conversation?
He told me that I was going to be staying home a few nights a week, that I was going to have my bedroom where it was, and it was going to be my bedroom, and that he wanted me to come home and eat and study with him several nights a week so that my grades would stay up and that he would be able to keep apprised of what was going on.
Now, was that a significant piece of information for you?
Yes.
And how did you react to hearing that he expected you to sleep at home?
I asked him what he meant. What he meant I was going to be staying home with my bedroom there and so on. And he said that I was going to be sleeping home several nights a week so that I could, at dinner and after dinner, go over my work with him. And I couldn't accept what he was saying.
What do you mean you couldn't accept it? You said, no, Dad, I'm not going to do that. Is that what happened?
No, I just kept asking him what he meant. I couldn't accept what he was saying.
Why?
Because he was saying I was going to have to live at home as well as living at college, and
what?
I didn't expect that.
Okay, you didn't expect that. Did you like that idea?
I hated the idea.
Why?
Because my entire dream had been to go to college and to leave home, and for the last several years, all I thought about was going to college, and suddenly he was telling me that I was going to be living at home and that the
Well, what did you think?
By the way, just for folks that are not familiar with the geography here, Beverly Hills is very, very close to UCLA. UCLA is on the west side of Los Angeles. It's, Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, all of these, Westwood, all of these areas are very, very geographically close to one another. So typically, I've had some friends who were from Los Angeles proper and did not want to go to UCLA because of the fact that it was too close to home. They wanted to go someplace different. They wanted, as many young adults want to do when they go off to college, right? You want to go someplace new. You want to try something different. You want to be on your own a little bit. So this area is I mean, it's a short commute to go from Beverly Hills to UCLA every day. And that seems to have been very intentional on Jose's part, because he could have chosen, even among all the different UC schools, University of California, you've got San Diego, you've got Santa Barbara, you've got San Francisco, Davis. There are so many schools that you could still stay within California and be quite a distance away. And yet they chose UCLA, which is the absolute closest school, which is still a very good school, very high ranked, and very good education, and has, I think, that reputation that Jose was looking for, while still not being an Ivy League, but still very, very, very good school. I mean, mere miles away from the Menendez home. Just wanted to point that out for folks that are not from the area and may not be familiar with the geography here.
I think that meant with respect.
Let him finish the answer. Did you finish your answer?
No.
Go ahead.
And he was going to be telling me that I was going to be living at home and that basically the sex was going to continue.
Did he say the sex is going to continue?
No, he didn't say that, but that's what I knew it meant.
That's what you believed it meant?
Yes.
And how did that make you feel?
It made me feel lost. It made me feel like it made me feel like the hope that I had was gone, and that suddenly this was gonna continue throughout college, and I felt like I was crumbling. I felt like nothing mattered anymore, that it was gonna continue.
Emotionally, what did you convey to your father during this meeting, if anything? How did you visibly react?
I guess I just acted stunned. I don't know how I reacted.
Did you cry?
No.
Did you ask him if you couldn't stay at school or take other classes?
No, I knew what he was saying, and I knew there was no arguing about it. I asked him what he meant several times, and he spelled it out for me pretty clearly, and I just realized what he was saying.
And do you recall what time of day this particular conversation took place?
Yes.
When was it?
Late afternoon.
And after that conversation, what did you do?
I went up to my bedroom.
And what did you do?
I just laid in my bed and cried and felt sorry for myself.
And what were you sorry about?
I was sorry that it was going to continue, that I wasn't going to get away from college, and I just didn't care about life anymore. I didn't care about things that were going to happen. I couldn't let this go on with my father, and I didn't know what to do.
Well, what did you consider?
I considered just killing myself.
Oh,
Did you consider killing your father?
No, not at that time.
Were you feeling angry? Were you feeling depressed? Were you feeling sad? What were you feeling at that point?
I was extremely sad. I felt like nothing mattered anymore. I felt like the one thing that I'd been living for suddenly was taken away from me, and I didn't care about life anymore.
Was your social life better when you lived in California versus when you lived in New Jersey, or was it worse, or was it the same?
It was better.
And what was different about your social life in California than when you lived in New Jersey?
I had a lot more friends. I was able to go out with my friends. I was able to hang out with my friends, and suddenly I felt more important.
You popped the mic.
I felt more important.
Okay. Did you feel liked by friends?
Yes.
During those years in California, did you ever think about what would happen if any of your friends knew? Did you think about that?
I thought about it all the time.
And what did you think?
I couldn't accept the fact that they might be able to find out. I was never going to let them find out, and that's just all I thought. I never found out. I never thought about what would happen if they knew, because that just was not going to happen.
Well, were you concerned about people knowing?
Yes.
Okay. Did you want them to know, or did you not want them to know?
No, I did not want them to know.
Why?
Overall,
Why didn't you want them to know?
we specify what it is that he didn't want him to know.
Why did you not want them to know that you were a boy who had sex with his father?
Because I didn't want to be humiliated. I wanted them to like me. I wanted them to think that I was a friend of theirs, and I just wanted to be one of them.
One of the boys.
Yeah.
Did you think what was happening with you and your father was normal or abnormal?
I knew it was extremely abnormal, and I wasn't going to let anyone find out.
Did you think what was happening with your father was all his fault, or did you think it was partly your fault?
No, I thought it was partly my fault.
In what way was it your fault?
That I never stopped him, and then I let it go on, and just those reasons.
Did you have a high opinion of yourself because of what was going on with your father? A low opinion? No opinion?
I thought I was a coward.
What else?
I hated myself for it, and I knew I should have stopped it.
Okay.
this is very common, very, very common with victims of SA, whether they are by a parent or anyone else. It's this idea of shame. Shame is one of these things that tends to follow victims and survivors in these kinds of cases. And so this, like, him talking about this, him saying these things and in this way, to me seems very sincere. It seems very, very sincere. Knowing what I know about the relationship of shame to these kinds of these kinds of cases. He desperately didn't want anyone to know, even though having someone know about this would have been helpful to him because it could have actually caused it to stop. I mean, obviously there's more horrible things could have also happened as a result, but this is very common in these kinds of cases. So anyway, so to me, this feels very sincere. And the way that he's got his eyebrows coming together, it seems like there's a lot of anger, and it seems like a lot of it is self-directed. That's how it seems to me.
Now, what did you do after you went through this period of feeling sad and feeling sorry for yourself?
I just cried a lot and decided to leave.
To leave?
To leave. I decided to go over to a friend's house.
You mean to leave the house?
Yes.
And what did you do based on that decision, if anything?
I packed my bags.
Back up a little.
I started to pack a big bag, duffel bag,
A big duffel bag?
one of my tennis bags,
Okay. How long were you planning to stay at a friend's house?
just for a few days.
And had you ever done that before?
I had stayed at a friend's house for a day, but never for a few days, no.
Did you think your parents would let you?
I really didn't care.
So you packed this tennis bag?
Yes.
Did something happen while you were in the process of packing it?
Yes.
What happened?
My mom came into the room. She knocked on the door, and I opened it, and she saw what I was doing. And
Why didn't she just walk in? Why did you have to open the door?
I always kept my door locked.
Did everybody in that house always keep their doors locked?
Yes.
And after your mother came in, what happened next?
She looked at what I was doing, and she said, "Where the hell do you think you're going?"
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Just for over a friend's house for a few days." And she said, "No, you're not." And she just started throwing the clothes out of the duffel bag. And
And what did you do?
I just watched.
And what happened after that?
She screamed and said a few more things about how I wasn't going to leave. And then she ran out of the room.
She ran out of the room?
Marched.
Marched?
She ran and marched out of the room.
She left the room in a hurry?
Yes.
What kind of emotional condition was she in when she left?
She was very angry.
Why was she angry?
We had had a fight before, a year before, about it.
A fight with whom?
We had an argument with my mom a year before, the same sort of argument,
About what?
about running away.
A year before there was an argument about running away?
Yes.
Well, did you tell your mother on this occasion, I'm running away, I'm going forever?
No, that was the year before.
On this occasion, where did you tell her you were going?
I just told her I was going over to my friend's house for a few days.
Did you tell her why?
No.
Did she ask why?
No.
So what did the year before have to do with the condition she was in when she left your room?
I just knew as soon as she walked in the room that there was going to be a problem, and I didn't even bother.
Well, what was her emotional condition? I'm not clear. Was she upset? Was she sad? Was she in despair that
When
her
she
son
walked in the room,
When she walked out of the room,
she was furious.
she was angry.
She was angry, yes.
Okay.
Sorry about the barking. Indy sees something out the window. I don't know what she sees. Sometimes it's a bird. Sometimes it's a curtain flowing in the wind in a nearby building. 1 second. Indy, what is it? What do you see? There is nothing threatening us. You don't need to bark. Okay. Sorry, guys. Yeah, or it's this. Indy has opinions. Definitely has some opinions. Indy. Okay, maybe I can distract her with some treats. Otherwise, we will continue with this.
Did you have permission to run away from home?
No.
Was she angry the year before when you told her you wanted to do that?
Yes.
And after your mother left the room angry, did someone else come to your room?
Yes.
And who was that?
Okay.
My father.
And did he say anything to you?
Yes.
What did he say?
First of all, when he said my father, did you hear how his voice went down? Very low. He was like, my father. Like it was just like it was this is going to be even worse. Ugh. Okay.
He asked me if I had a problem, and he asked me what I thought I was doing, and pushed me against the window, and I came up real close, and he said, "You planning on going somewhere?" And I said,
Now,
"No."
are you remembering this verbatim? You remember every word he said?
No, I just remember the feeling that I had and what he did.
Is this the substance of the conversation?
Yes.
Okay. And what else, if anything? What were the other things he said?
He told me that he was leaving this week and that I had better be there when I get back.
When you get back?
When he gets back.
Okay.
He said that he was leaving that week and that he would deal with me then.
Deal with you when?
When he got back.
And what did that mean to you?
I figured what it would mean. I figured that it would mean that he would punish me in some way.
Mr. Menendez, you have to sit back. You keep popping the mic. Try to sit back.
I figured that it would mean he would punish me in some way, in the way he always did.
It wasn't what?
In the way he always did.
Did he strike you during this conversation?
No.
And after, I take it he left after telling you he would deal with you when he got back?
Yes.
And how did you feel after he left? Were you still going to pack and go to a friend's house?
No, you see, the state I was in at the time, I just didn't care. It just, after my dad told me that I wasn't going to get away from him in essence, instead of going to college, that I was going to have to stay at home several nights a week, I just didn't care. Nothing seemed to matter to me anymore, and life just seemed to fold right in front of me, and I didn't care whether he hit me. I didn't care whether he killed me. It didn't matter to me anymore, because if I wasn't going to get away from that, then who cared? And so he did what he wanted. It didn't matter anymore.
Well, are those the thoughts that went through your mind after he left?
Those were the thoughts that were there the whole day and the next day.
Okay. And were you then getting ready to put up with the same activity for the next few years that you had been putting up with for the previous 12?
No.
What were you thinking of doing?
I was thinking of just killing myself. I was in a daze and I didn't know what to do. And I just wanted to die. Life no longer mattered. And I didn't know what to do. I thought of telling Lyle. I thought I couldn't do that it would be too embarrassing, and that I couldn't admit it. And I just.
So 2 things occurred to you. One, to kill yourself, and the other, to tell Lyle?
Yes.
Over the years, the 12 years, had you ever told Lyle?
No.
Were you ever accused by your father of having told Lyle?
Yes.
And approximately when was that?
When I was about 11.
When you were about 11?
Yeah.
Lyle would have been 13 or 14?
Somewhere right around there.
And on that occasion when your father accused you of telling Lyle, was it true? Had you told him?
No.
Now, on this occasion, you said you considered telling Lyle.
Yes.
What do you think Lyle could do?
I really didn't know. I really didn't. It wasn't a thought that I had planned out. It was just a thought because I didn't really want to die, and I was very afraid that I would. And maybe it was partly to tell Lyle, because that's what my dad always never wanted me to do. I don't know. I needed help in some way, and I just thought about telling Lyle.
Did you think about ways to kill yourself?
Oh, boy.
Yes.
What ways did you think about?
I thought about just hanging myself. I thought about cutting my wrists. I thought about driving off a cliff, something that I wanted to do before.
Had you in 1986 and 1987 come across any suicide letters written by your mother?
Yes.
In any letter of your mother's that you saw, did she ever indicate the methods that she was contemplating using to kill herself?
Yes.
And what do you recall reading in those letters of your mother?
She wanted to shoot herself.
Did you come across any letter where she indicated she would sit in the bathtub with a razor in her hand and consider slitting her wrists?
Yes.
Oh boy.
Did you picture yourself doing that after this confrontation with your parents?
Yes, I had pictured it many times before.
Had you thought of suicide before this week?
Yes.
Now, do you have any memory at all, Mr. Menendez, of what you did the Monday before your parents died?
No.
Do you have a memory of every single day that summer?
No.
Do you have a memory, though, of every day after that Monday until your parents died?
Yes.
Starting then with Tuesday, what do you remember about Tuesday, August 15th, 1989?
I remember trying to play tennis in the morning, not caring enough about it, and stopping.
What was your general mood that morning?
I was just very down, very depressed.
Okay, depressed.
Yeah.
And what else do you recall happening that Tuesday?
I recall a fight between my brother and my mother.
Now, what was your understanding that Tuesday about where your father was?
He was out of town.
And do you know when it was he left?
I believe on Monday. I'm not quite sure.
Did you usually know in advance when your father was leaving on a business trip?
No.
Did he go on a lot of business trips?
Oh yeah, he went on business trips all the time.
And how would you become aware of the fact that he was on a trip?
Either my mother would tell me, or he would call and I'd talk to him on the phone.
But he never bothered telling you his schedule, where he was going or when?
No.
On this week, though, he did actually tell you in advance that he was going on a trip that week, did he not?
Yes.
Did he tell you specifically when he was leaving and when he was coming back?
No, all he told me is that I'd better be there when he got back. I didn't know when that really was until I asked my mother.
And what did you learn after asking your mother? When was he due back?
Thursday.
Now, on Tuesday, what else do you remember besides not being able to practice tennis in the morning?
A fight between my mother and my brother.
When you say fight, you mean a physical altercation?
No, I just mean an argument. A lot of yelling.
Okay. And where did this argument take place?
Right between the den and the foyer.
In the house?
Yes.
When you entered this house from outside, would you be standing in an open area?
Yeah, you were standing in the foyer at that point.
That's what you refer to as the foyer.
Mm-hmm.
And was there a staircase on the right that went upstairs?
Yes.
And was there a sort of gallery that cut across? Halfway into the foyer, was there like a lower ceiling?
You mean a balcony?
Yeah, the
Yes,
balcony.
the balcony.
And were they in the area beneath the balcony?
Just in front of it.
So
To
they
the
were
side of the bathroom.
past the balcony. There's another section of the foyer that leads to a bathroom and the den.
Yes.
So they were closer to the den than the part with the balcony.
Yes.
And how did you come upon this argument? Did they come out of a room
They
towards
came out
you?
of the den.
Okay.
And my mom came out first, and she was yelling, and she was saying, "You don't need it. I don't care. I don't care what you want. You're not having it." And Lyle was right behind her, saying, "Please, please, I need it. It's not that big a deal. It's important to me."
Now, at that point, did you have any idea what they were talking about?
No, I had no idea what they were talking about.
And do you know where you were coming from?
I was coming from my car.
Do you know where you had been?
I don't remember where I'd been.
Okay. And this mom yelling at Lyle, was this a unique experience in your life?
No, not at all.
And how typical was it for your mother to be yelling at Lyle?
She yelled at Lyle all the time.
Did she yell at you all the time?
Not as much as she yelled at Lyle.
And on this particular occasion, on this Tuesday, did she appear to be angry?
Yeah, she was really angry.
And was that an unusual condition for her in relation to when she was dealing with Lyle?
No, she was usually very angry when she was dealing with Lyle, but she was really angry a lot that summer.
Okay. And what happens after you hear this exchange between your mother and Lyle?
He was just saying I need it, and she just took a hold of his hair and just ripped it off.
What did you think at that point?
I didn't know what to think. I couldn't believe it. I didn't understand at first, and then it hit me, and then I realized, and
What didn't you understand? What hit you? What did you realize?
well, she just pulled off his hair, and I knew he had something done to his hair, but I didn't know what, and within a moment I realized that it was a hairpiece, but I just couldn't believe it.
At first, what did you think it was?
I thought it was his hair.
That she was ripping off his scalp, basically.
Yes.
Geez.
Now, you said you knew he had something done to his hair. What do you mean by that?
Well, I knew that his hair was beginning to fall out, and I had heard about a conversation that he and Mom and him had, I guess. I don't really remember it that well, but I know that suddenly he had a full head of hair, and it was always neat, always perfect, and I didn't quite understand what had happened.
Well, didn't that tell you he wore a toupee?
I didn't know really much about those sorts of things. I mean, I knew what a toupee was, but I thought it was obvious when you wore one, and I couldn't imagine that my brother was wearing one.
Because it didn't seem obvious?
I played tennis with him. I went swimming with him. It did not seem like he was wearing a toupee at all.
So you thought it was some other method by which his hair was thickened or restored?
Yeah, I thought it was some sort of surgery. I didn't know exactly what it was.
So when you saw your mother ripping his hair off, did you react?
Yeah, I was pretty shocked. I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it.
And how did he react? How did Lyle react?
He just started to cry.
And what, if anything, did your mother do after she had taken the toupee off of Lyle?
She said, "See."
Did you guys hear that? Did you catch it? She said, "What if anything?" Ah, it's okay though. She's not using it for literally every single question, so it's fine. We can forgive you, Leslie.
You look fine. You don't need it, and just threw it at him.
Did he look fine to you?
No, I really couldn't believe it. No.
Had you ever seen him like that?
No.
So what did your mother do, if anything, after she threw the hairpiece at Lyle?
She ran up the stairs.
And what did Lyle do?
He wouldn't look at me. Not that I wanted him to at the time. But he went to the guest house.
And what did you do?
I eventually went over to the guest house.
Now, why did you go over to the guest house at that point?
Because I felt really bad for Lyle, and I was feeling pretty bad myself. And I just I'd been wanting to talk to him for 2 days, and I figured that he couldn't have had a more down moment than that. And so I figured I'd just share the moment with him.
By the way, that I know that I see in the chat folks are talking about Lyle losing his hair. I mean, at this point, Lyle was 21 years old. He had started losing his hair as a teenager, which is very, very, very young. I mean, usually young guys can definitely start losing their hair in their 20s. I've seen it. It most commonly starts happening in 30s and 40s and beyond, but they can start losing it in their 20s. But he had started at 14, which is very, very different, very not different, but very rare, I would say. I don't know of any specific diagnoses that he's ever had for it, but I would venture to guess that there's some part of it that probably has to do with stress. I mean, just the amount of stress that these guys grew up in from their birth all the way until, all of this happened. I would not be surprised if stress played a huge role in all of that. I think Lyle also had a bedwetting issue, if I remember correctly. And that can also be a sign of stress, and also other issues. So yeah. Anyway, I just thought I'd comment on that. All right, let's continue on.
You were feeling down for 2 days?
Yeah.
Did you think if you before this incident, did you think if you talked to your brother, he might make you feel better?
Yes.
Did you have a good relationship with your brother at that time?
Yeah, I had a very good relationship.
Your Honor, it's a 2 afternoon.
All right, we'll take a recess until 1:30, ladies and gentlemen, with this same admonition not to discuss the case with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it, and we'll resume at 1:30. Direct examination.
Okay. Mr. Menendez, we were talking about what you did after you saw the argument between your mother and your brother. Did you go somewhere?
Yes.
And where did you go?
I went to the guest house
Why did you go there?
to talk to Lyle.
And did you have in mind what you were going to talk to him about?
Not really, just that, I understood, or I didn't mind that he wore a hairpiece, and that I was feeling down too, just to talk to him, to comfort him.
And when you got to the guest house, did you see your brother?
Yes.
Where was he?
He was in the bathroom fixing his hairpiece.
And at some point, did he come out of the bathroom?
Yes.
Did you start to talk to him?
Yes.
Can you tell us generally what you were telling him?
Is it being offered for the truth of the matter asserted?
No, Your Honor.
And why is it being offered?
It's being offered to as foundation for a conversation that is being offered for truth.
Objection sustained.
You heard your brother testify that you talked to him about how you wanted to be close to him.
Yes.
And is that what you said?
Yes.
And did the conversation then evolve into talking about something else?
Yes.
And where did it evolve to? What else did you talk about?
Again, is this being offered for the truth of the matter asserted?
Yes, Your Honor.
Objection sustained.
Well, I'd like to approach.
You may.
Thank you.
This objection is sustained as far as the form of the question. The answers of the witness in regards to conversations are not being received for the truth of what was said. Just to reflect the state of mind of the defendant witness here, Mr. Erik Menendez, and potentially the state of mind of the person who heard what he said.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, Mr. Menendez, what did you say to your brother when you first started talking to him in the guest house?
I was telling him that that things in the family didn't seem to be going so well, and there seemed to be a lot of secrets, and that people seemed to be getting apart, and that I didn't want that to happen between Lyle and I.
And what else did you say?
Just that that I loved him, and that I didn't want his relationship and mine to separate.
Could you assess what kind of mood your brother was in when you were saying these things to him, from how he looked? Or?
Well, after the incident with my mom, he looked pretty down.
Did you think that having his hairpiece torn off in front of you was a thing that would embarrass him?
Yes.
And did that enter at all in? I'm sorry, I've got the mic covered wrong. Did that enter at all into your decision or desire to go talk to him?
Yes. No, I knew he was very embarrassed, and I wanted to tell him that there wasn't a reason to be.
That it wasn't going to change your relationship?
No.
And then did you start talking about something that you were feeling badly about?
Yes. I remember asking him if he remembered a conversation that he had with Dad when he was a lot younger, when I was 11.
And did he respond?
Yeah. He said he didn't know what I was talking about. And I asked him several times if he remembered anything about conversation that he had had with Dad or conversations that he had had with me. about things that Dad was doing to me, and he said that he didn't know what I was talking about.
So eventually, did you clarify what you were talking about?
Yeah.
What did you say?
I told him that things between Dad and I were still happening, and that and he kept asking what I was talking about.
So
And
did you tell him what you were talking about?
finally, I told him. I told him
Okay.
that they were just sexual things.
Sexual things?
Yes.
Now, why did you tell him that? Why did you bring that up?
Because I was feeling really, really depressed and really down, and I didn't know what to do at the time. So I figured I'd tell Lyle, and maybe he could help me.
Okay. And did he? You heard him testify. You heard your brother Lyle testify that when you told him that sexual things were still going on with you and Dad, that he was very nasty towards you.
Yeah, he was very angry.
And who did he appear to be angry at?
He was angry at me. He was asking me why I never told him. He was asking me why I never did anything. He asked me if I enjoyed it, if I liked it, if I ever fought back. He just didn't understand. He was asking all these questions that were really surprising me.
And apart from surprising you, how did these angry questions make you feel?
They hurt me. And I was denying him, and I was saying, no, of course not. No, of course not. And I was just trying to make him understand.
And at some
And this, by the way, is something that makes Lyle look like not a good person, right? Like the moment that he learns about this, he turns around and accuses Erik, and says, like, how could you allow this to continue? Blaming the victim in so many ways. And this doesn't make Lyle look good, but this is one of those things that is maybe a smaller detail in this entire story, but it does help with the credibility of the defense that they are willing to acknowledge these events and these little details that don't really paint them in the best light, right? Like Lyle has admitted to doing some terrible things to Erik, and he's also admitted to saying terrible things. So this is one of those. So this is one example of how it's best to address warts and to sometimes put them to the forefront. And if you address them head on, they can make you appear more credible.
At some point, did it appear that he did understand?
Yes, he sort of changed his tone.
Okay. And did he indicate to you, after he changed his tone, any plan or any decision that he was making?
I could tell he was now just trying to understand where I was coming from. He was asking me who knew. He asked me if Mom knew.
Okay, and what did you say when he asked you if Mom knew?
Oh, I told him, of course, Mom didn't know. That if she would have known, she didn't know.
And is that how you felt at that time, that your mother did not know?
Yes.
And did you ask him to do anything for you?
I'm sorry.
Did you ask your brother to do anything? You're telling him how badly you feel about this, right?
Yes.
You're telling him you don't want it to go on?
I don't remember if I told him that exactly. I'm sure I conveyed it to him because he started talking about how it was not going to happen again, and he started to get really, really angry. And he was really upset and saying that it wasn't going to happen again. And I was saying, I didn't know. Dad said it was going to keep happening, and I was really worried about it going on when he went away. And he said, I don't have anything to worry about, that it's not going to happen again. And
did he tell you anything else that was going to change besides that this wasn't going to happen?
Yes.
What else did he say was going to change?
He said that I was going to go to Princeton with him.
So, by the way, on this point of Lyle's response here, this is also a good point. Angelica Gonzalez says Lyle probably was in denial. Also happened to him. I think that it's one of those. I think that what happened is, because this had also happened to Lyle in his childhood, he had managed to compartmentalize that in his childhood, because it's like it didn't happen beyond a certain age, and he knew that Jose had abused Erik also in his early childhood, and he he says that he told Jose to stop. Jose said, okay, I'll stop. And so Lyle says that he thought that at that point it had stopped. He had no awareness of it continuing on, because Jose didn't tell him, Erik didn't tell him, no one told him. So I think there's potentially multiple parts here that could or multiple explanations for why Lyle reacted in the way that he did. Number one, it hits very close to home, and anytime something like that happens, the brain has a tendency to want to protect itself. And so in the same way that you generally don't want women on the jury in a criminal rape case, because women are more likely to, distance themselves from the victim by saying, I wouldn't do this, I wouldn't do that, I wouldn't do this, I wouldn't do that. Like kind of judging the victim in various ways. At the same time, Lyle looking at Erik with this continuing on, there could be part of it that is, he's trying to mentally distance himself from the possibility of like, this is real. Another part of it probably is, Lyle has indicated that he was very protective of Erik. And here, what we just heard just now was Erik saying, well, you have nothing to worry about now. I'm going to take care of it. I think part of it was him feeling very guilty as an older brother that he couldn't protect him. He couldn't, say anything or do anything to prevent it from happening or to stop it from happening further. And Lyle basically testified to that earlier as well. So I think there are maybe multiple layers to this, to explain why Lyle reacted in the way that he did. So, okay, just wanted to say that.
He said that if I couldn't get into Princeton, then I was just going to live with him over there.
And did he tell you how these changes were going to come about?
Yes.
And what did he say?
He said he was going to talk to Dad. Talk
to Dad about what?
About the stuff that had happening between Dad and I. He said it was going to stop and that I shouldn't worry about it because it was going to end and he was going to make sure of it.
And did he seem confident when he said these things?
Yeah, he seemed really optimistic, too optimistic.
Did you feel as optimistic as he seemed?
No, I was trying to tell him, Dad's going to be a little bit more upset than you think. Dad's not going to be too happy about you telling him this information. And he said, no, don't worry about it. It'll be okay. It'll be fine. And I was just trying to warn him, but not too much.
What do you mean you weren't trying to warn him too much?
Well, I was really afraid that if I told him all that was happening, that he might not talk to Dad and just leave me there. And so I didn't want him to get worried about it, that Dad might react badly. So I wanted to just tell him that Dad might not like what he's going to tell him. And I wanted Lyle to understand it a little bit more, but I didn't quite want to tell him.
What was it you didn't want to tell him? Was there something your dad had said to you repeatedly?
Yes. I didn't want to tell him that Dad said he would kill me if I ever told anyone, and he was serious. And I just thought it might scare him off.
Scare who off?
Lyle off.
So that is a point in the direction of them fearing for their lives in this whole situation. After Lyle actually does in fact go to Kitty and Jose and to talk about it. From Erik's point of view, he was already a dead man by virtue of telling Lyle anyhow. I also wanted to address this as a question from Brittany Chanel. Even if the mother knew, what could the mom do? Like, what if the father started abusing her? It's kind of a tricky thing. Well, in fact, he was abusing her. He was physically abusing her for a period of time. They also had a very strange dynamic too, because at one point, I think Kitty had basically just had enough. And so she decided to sort of turn the power dynamic back on Jose. She, threatened to unalive herself and to take the whole family with her. And this was worrisome enough to Jose that he seems to have thought that was a legitimate threat. And so there was a period of time when all three of them were walking on eggshells around Kitty. But but she also had this weird Oedipal relationship with Lyle before. She absolutely knew that this was happening. There also was their cousin Diane had Vandermolen. She had previously testified in this trial also that Lyle told her as a young boy that he was being abused by his father, and so her first instinct was the same as many would think, is to go to their mother and to tell her. Kitty's reaction to that was to get very upset with Lyle, to make him, to like scream at him, run him upstairs to go to bed, and to basically just like brush everything under the rug. And so, and to make Diane think that she, like, basically gaslight Diane. So to second guess what Lyle had actually said to him, and all that kind of stuff. So there was abuse and toxicity in every possible direction in this family, also from Kitty to the boys as well. And what that question that Leslie had asked Erik a little bit ago about about her Kitty's unaliving letters, notes, as to what she planned to do, that I think is important, because she had talked about, like I said, taking everybody with her, and she had talked about using a firearm. And I think that's important because they actually had firearms. The parents had firearms in the house. And that's important to the defense to say, this is a legitimate threat. Even Jose believed it. She had the means to do it. The means were readily accessible. And so either one of them, they had the ability to use these weapons against them, and they were fully prepared to do so. That's what the defense wants the jury to believe. So yeah. I think there's a lot of evidence in this trial saying that she did in fact know. Also, previously, I don't know if you saw this portion of the trial where they introduced photographs that had been developed. Obviously this is before digital photography. They had been developed, and there was all on the same roll. There was like, a birthday party, a bunch of photos. And then there were photos of the boys when they were like little, like 5-6 years old, of them from like the neck down, completely naked. And on the back of these photos, you can see Katie's handwriting of like, this is so-and-so's birthday party, blah, 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 blah. So clearly there's evidence here that she had to have known that these photos existed of them in this way that is pornographic. I'm trying not to use, I mean, this live stream is already demonetized. So, we're already there. I just don't want the video or the channel to be taken down. But there's evidence there showing that she knew this stuff was happening. She knew that this is graphically happening, and yet did nothing, and in fact, in some ways, even promoted it to happen.
So you didn't tell him that?
No.
And at that time on Tuesday, did you tell your brother any of the details of what the sexual activity between yourself and your father was?
No.
You didn't tell him about knees or
No.
nice or rough or sex?
None of that.
And did you tell him anything about the violent component of your sexual activity with your father?
No.
Was there a reason why you didn't tell him that?
There were two reasons. One, I didn't want to scare him off, and two, I just didn't want to tell him about it.
Was it easy or difficult for you to admit to your brother that this was going on?
It was very hard for me.
Were you eager or reluctant to give him any specifics of the kind of things that you and your father had been doing?
I was very reluctant. I just didn't want to have to go into it with him. He was my brother, and I felt really ashamed that I would have to talk about the fact that it was still happening with him.
Now, at the end of this conversation on Tuesday, Did your brother tell you what he had decided he would do to help you?
Yes.
And what did he tell you he had decided to do?
Well, he said that he was going to talk to Dad.
Now, you encouraged him to do that, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I did.
Could you think of anything else that you might do for help at that point besides Lyle's offer to talk to your father?
No, there was nothing I could do.
Were you apprehensive or worried about how the talk might come out?
I was very nervous. I was really nervous about how Dad would react. I really didn't think Dad was going to react well, but I was hoping that he might. I was hoping that Lyle might do what he seemed like he said he was going to do.
Had you noticed over the years that your father spent a fair amount of time talking with your brother?
Yes.
Did you believe that your father and your brother had a different relationship than you had with your father?
Yeah, he had a much different relationship.
And as you were growing up, did you feel that the family as a whole had some respect for Lyle? What did you think of your brother's intellectual ability?
I thought he was very, very intelligent, and
Was that just your view, or did anybody else in the family share it?
that's what my dad and my mother thought.
And what did you think of Lyle's verbal skills?
Well, he was good in all of that. He was intelligent. He was a good speaker. He knew how to talk, and I figured that he would know how to talk to Dad. If he seemed confident, maybe there was a reason for him to be confident. And he knew Dad a lot better than I did in that respect.
Now, do you remember anything occurring the next day on Wednesday?
Yes.
Do you remember going to lunch with your brother as he testified?
Yes.
And what was the topic of conversation at that lunch?
How I was going to live with him. And he decided that either I was going to go to Princeton with him or he was going to come and live with me at UCLA. And he seemed excited about that.
Was that a prospect that you relished as well?
Yeah, I thought that would be great. Although I was trying to tell him that he shouldn't be so optimistic.
But did you, on that occasion, tell him about your father's threats or his violence or any of that?
No, I didn't. Again, I didn't tell him about it at all.
What did you think might happen, if anything, if you actually had told your brother at that point the specifics about how violent your father had been?
I didn't know, but I was worried about him getting scared off or him just not talking to Dad at all and leaving me there with him. And that's what my biggest fear was. And I did the wrong thing. I just told him none of it.
Now, was there also, during that lunch, did your brother mention to you anything about a talk that he had had with your mother earlier that day?
Yeah.
What did he tell you?
He said that he talked to Mom and told her that he wanted to talk to Dad when Dad got home about me.
Okay, now did you respond to that?
Yeah.
What did you say?
I said, you didn't tell him about what I told you.
You didn't tell who?
Mom.
Okay.
I was asking Lyle if he told Mom about what I told to him that happened between Dad and I. And
did he respond?
yeah, he said no. I was real worried about that.
He told you he hadn't told her.
Yeah, he told me he had not told her.
Now, your worry, if he had told Mom, was what? What were you afraid of? If he had told Mom, what were you worried about?
I don't know. I'm not really quite sure. I just was. I wanted Lyle to talk to Dad, but I was really afraid of it too. And it just seemed like if he told Mom that, then the talk would have to happen. And in a sense, I didn't want it.
Why would the talk have to happen if he told your mother?
Because if he told Mom, I would have done the one thing that he always told me never, ever to do. And I just was worried about doing that.
Mr. Menendez, if your brother had told your mother, what did you think your mother would have done?
Oh, she would have talked to my dad.
Okay. Even though he was out of town?
Yes.
Did they talk every day as
Yes.
far as you knew?
No, he always called home.
Did your mother tend to talk to your father more than once a day?
Yes.
Was that true for as long as you
All of
lived
my
in that
life.
family? And based on your experience in the family, did your mother tell your father everything that you guys were up to?
Sustained.
Was it your experience that if something happened, if you had done something wrong or got into trouble, did your father know about it, even if he wasn't home when it happened?
Yes.
And did your mother over the years ever say anything about telling your father what was going on in the house when he wasn't there?
She would always threaten to tell Dad, and sometimes she'd do it right in front of me at the dinner table, or I could hear it in their bedroom or when he got home. Otherwise, she would just threaten, if you do this, I'm going to tell your father. Or
With respect to things you actually did that upset her or annoyed her, did it appear from your father's reactions that she always told him?
yes.
Did you feel that you could trust your mother to keep information from your father?
No,
Did
definitely
you
not.
ever feel that way?
No.
Mr. Menendez, just for a moment, I want to change the subject. Did you hear some of your teachers testify in this trial about an auditory processing problem that you have?
Yes.
And were you aware were you aware of the fact when you were in school that you had a problem?
No.
You didn't know you had a problem following instructions or
Oh, I knew I had a problem doing that, but I didn't know
what the
I had
cause
an
was?
auditory problem like that. No.
You knew you had problems understanding, but you didn't know what it was due to?
Yes.
Now, you have learned the past 3.5 years that you had this problem.
Yes.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Have you learned in the past 3 years since you've been in jail by looking at various materials anything about having such a problem?
Yes.
Do you think you still have it?
Yes.
Which, by the way, that can become an issue on cross-examination. We talked last week about how, Leslie is asking her questions in a very particular way, and it's making it it's making it easier for me to pay attention. Sometimes I struggle with that, and it's making it easier for Erik to pay attention and to follow her questions. Now, there's no guarantee that the person on cross-examination is going to be doing that. And in fact, I would imagine they would absolutely not care about his auditory processing issues. So it'll be interesting to see what happens on cross-examination, how well he's able to keep up with their questions and with his focus on cross-examination, and how they ask their questions.
And is this the kind of problem where you know that you don't understand what you're hearing, or do you think that you do understand what you're hearing? If you look puzzled, you don't understand the question, do you?
I think so. Yes.
Okay, you didn't understand the question.
No.
All right. Has it been your experience that you'd hear something and you thought you understood it and only found out later that you got it wrong?
Yes.
Are you trying to listen carefully?
Yes.
Now, at the end of the talk on Wednesday with your brother Lyle, did you feel apprehensive about Thursday?
Yes.
Were you sorry you had told him at that point? Were you glad? Were you not sure?
I wasn't sorry I told him. I was uneasy about it, but I was glad that I told him. He he was nice at that point to me, and he seemed optimistic, and I was hoping that things would be okay.
Had your brother been nice to you for some time up to that point?
Yes, we had a good relationship up to that point.
And how would you rate your relationship with the other family members? Who among the three of them, your father, your mother, or your brother, did you have the best relationship with?
Lyle.
And how long had that been true?
Many years, since I was 13, 12.
And who among the other members of your family was nicest to you?
Lyle.
Turning to Thursday, were you home in the early part of the day, you think?
Yes, I believe I was. I was playing tennis.
And were you playing tennis with someone else?
You're my coach.
Mark Heffernan?
Yes.
And where did you play tennis with him on Thursday?
In the backyard.
At home.
Yes.
And your father was expected home from the trip when?
Late afternoon, early evening. Like around
Did you
6.
have a specific time that you knew about?
Yeah, I think it was about 6. I think that was the time that I had in my head at the time.
Sometime later in the day after you had your tennis lesson with Mr. Heffernan, did you leave the house as your brother has testified?
Yes.
And did you come back real late?
Yes.
And why did you stay away?
I just wanted not to be home when Lyle was having the conversation with Dad. And so I stayed away and kept calling in to see if he had the conversation. And he kept telling me it had been delayed, so I stayed away longer.
The conversation was delayed, or your father's return was delayed, or what?
My dad's return.
And you learned that by calling Lyle?
Yes.
Now, your brother testified that there were 3 lines in the house, 3 different telephone lines, but they all rang, at least in the main house,
Yes.
in more than one location in the main house.
Yes.
And when you called in on Thursday, you called which line?
Lyle's line.
And did he pick it up each time?
Every time except for one.
And on that one time, who picked it up?
Mom.
And what did you do when Mom picked it up?
I hung up.
Why did you hang up?
I didn't want to talk to Mom. I just didn't want to talk to her at the moment.
And over the course of these calls, with you calling in, did the time for your father's return change at all?
It got later and later and later, and I didn't understand why, but it just got later.
Now, at some point late that night, did you go back home?
Yes.
And who was the first member of your family that you came in contact with after you went back home?
Dad.
And where were you when you came in contact with your father?
In my bedroom.
And how did the contact with your father begin?
He was banging on my door with his fist.
And did he say anything? Did you hear him?
Yeah, he was yelling for me to open up the door. He was saying, "Open the goddamn door now."
And what was your feeling when you heard him and heard the pounding?
I was terrified. My heart was pounding, and I didn't want to open up the door.
What did you think, if anything, had happened? Did you think there had already been a talk with Lyle? Did you think there hadn't been the talk with Lyle? What did you think?
From Dad's reaction, I thought there had been a talk with Lyle.
And could you tell from the way his voice sounded and the pounding whether he was in a good mood, a bad mood, happy, sad?
No,
angry?
he was really upset.
Upset meaning?
He was yelling. He was furious. It sounded furious.
Angry.
Angry.
Now, what did you do after you heard your father yelling and pounding on the door?
He was demanding that I open it, I unlock it, and so I did quietly.
Okay. You unlocked the door?
I just unlocked the lock and went back to the back of my bedroom.
You didn't open the door for him, in other words?
No,
Why did you do that?
because I wanted to have time to get back into the corner of my bedroom.
And if I might approach, Your Honor. Excuse me. Showing you the photograph that's previously been marked 257. Do you recognize what that is?
Yes. Yes,
And what is that?
that's one of the corners of my bedroom.
And is that the corner you retreated to after you had unlocked the lock on your door?
Yes.
And what was it about being in that corner that led you to go there?
It's just that it was like a good retreat place because the bed and my desk met, and so you couldn't get there very easily.
In other words, there was a narrow space between, the desk is here, is it not?
Yes.
And this is,
My bed.
and was it narrow between the two?
Yes.
Were you expecting something to happen when your dad came through the door?
Yes.
What were you expecting?
I didn't quite know what would happen, but I figured he would attack me in some way or hit me or do something.
Had he hit you before in your life?
Yes.
Had he done other physical things that hurt you when angry?
Yes.
What kind of thing? What was the thing he most typically did when he was angry?
Most typically he slapped me.
And what about pushing your body into objects? Would he do that?
Yeah, he'd throw me a lot.
Throw you a lot?
Yes, he'd throw me into the wall or into the bed or into the desk or into the glass or any place.
He once threw you into a glass door, didn't he?
Yes.
Broke the door
Shattered the glass.
and then threw you again?
Yeah.
I threw it. Right?
Hmm.
So when he came into the room on this occasion, what was the first thing that happened?
He started yelling at me.
Can you give us generally what he was saying?
He was saying that he had told me never to tell Lyle and that he had warned me not to do that. And now he said that Lyle was going to tell everyone and that it was my fault. And now Lyle was going to tell everyone and he was not going to let that happen.
He was not going to let what happen?
He said he wasn't going to let Lyle tell. Well, he didn't say he wasn't going to let Lyle anyone. He just said he wasn't going to let that happen. Lyle telling anyone.
Now you say he said he told you in the past what?
Well, he had told me never, ever to tell anyone.
And did he ever tell you what the consequence would be of telling anyone?
He would kill me.
And did he seem the way he had sounded outside the door? Furious, angry?
Seem inside the door?
Yeah, when he was inside, did he look and sound the way you thought he was?
Oh, yeah, he was angry. He was more angry than I ever seen him. He was angry.
And what did he do after he made these statements to you?
Well, I started saying, no, he's not going to tell anyone, I promise. And he just told me to shut up and just rushed toward me.
And did he come in physical contact with you?
Yeah, he grabbed me as I was trying to get over the desk.
You were trying to climb over the desk?
Yeah, I was trying to jump over the desk because I just wanted to get away from him at that point.
And he somehow stopped you from jumping over the desk and did what?
Well, he grabbed me and threw me on the bed.
Okay. And then did he try to do something to you while on the bed?
Yeah, he was grabbing toward me and I was able to just to fling my body away and run out the door.
So you got away from him?
Yeah.
And where did you run to?
Downstairs.
And did you go into a particular room downstairs after you got down the stairs?
Yeah, I just ran into the den.
Did you think there was anybody in the den?
Yeah, I thought there might be somebody in the den. The television was on.
And was there, in fact, anybody in the den?
Yes,
Who?
my mom.
What was your mother doing in the den?
She was sitting on the couch watching TV. She just looked over at me.
And what condition were you in when you got into the den? Do you know?
I was crying.
And did she say anything to you? Did she make any comment to you?
Yeah, she said, "What's the matter with you?"
And what did you respond to her when she said that?
Yeah, I said, "No, nothing. You won't understand."
You said,
I said, "No, nothing. You won't understand."
and did she say anything to that?
Yeah, she said something like, "Oh, I understand. I understand a lot more than you think."
What did you say when you heard? Well, first of all, what did you think when you heard that?
I couldn't. I thought that she was saying that she knew what was happening between Dad and I, but I couldn't. I thought I had it wrong, and so I said, "What do you mean? What do you mean you understand? What do you understand?" And I couldn't understand.
And what did she say?
Well, she said, "Oh, I know. I've always known. You think I'm stupid?" She was real snide. I think she was either. I think she had been drinking and was real.
Sarcastic.
Yeah.
Was that something that your mother was from time to time? Sarcastic.
Yes.
So what did you say when she said she knew all along she wasn't stupid?
I didn't know what to say. I just said, "I hate you." I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what she was saying.
All you said was, "I hate you."
I said, "I hate you."
And what did you do?
I ran out the back door.
And what did your mother do?
She immediately got up and started chasing me outside.
Was she saying anything?
Yeah, she was saying, "Get back here, you bastard. Don't ever say that to me. How dare you say that to me?"
Now, what was she referring to? Did you know what to your saying, "I hate you"? Is that what she was referring to?
Yeah, that's what she was angry at.
She was angry at this point.
Yeah, well, she was. I didn't understand the mood she was in before I even got to the room. She was in a mood that she had been in a lot, but she was angry at that point.
Okay, when she said,
Which is, I mean, it's ironic that like she got so mad at him for saying "I hate you." Meanwhile, she had told them how many times that she wished that they weren't born. She says that she regrets having them because they both interfered with the life that she wished that she could have had with Jose. That because they were around, Jose spent so much time on them as opposed to her. Horrible things that no mother should ever tell their child. And yet she was upset that he told her he hated her.
whatever she said to you sarcastically, she didn't seem angry then.
No.
But when you said, "I hate you," then she got angry.
Yes.
Now, had you heard your mother tell you or your brother, "I hate you," over the course of your life?
Yeah.
Had she said it once, twice?
No, she said it often.
Right?
So were you saying back to her what she had said to you?
Objection sustained.
So was this phrase, "I hate you," was this something that you heard over the course of your life?
Yes.
Had you ever said it to your mother before?
No.
Did you hate your mother, Mr. Menendez?
No, I didn't hate my mother.
You could speak up, it would help.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you hate your mother?
No.
Were you expecting her to say what she said to you in the den?
No, not at all.
And where did you go when you ran out of the den?
I ran to the guest house.
And did your mother follow you?
Yes, she chased after me.
And did what she had said affect you?
Of course. What do you mean,
Okay.
did it affect me? How do you mean?
Emotionally?
Yes.
And were you upset?
Yes.
When you got to the guest house, did you call out to your brother?
Yes.
And do you remember what the first thing was that you said to him?
I just said, "She knows, Mom knows."
And did there then ensue an argument between you and your mother and your brother.
Sustained.
What happened next in the guest house?
Mom came up the stairs right after me, and she said, "Get back." She was still yelling at me.
Okay,
And
without getting into the words about it, okay? Was there conversation in the guest house?
yes,
And how would you characterize it? Was it friendly? Was it angry? Was it a discussion? Was it an argument?
it was an angry argument between Lyle and Mom.
And what were you doing while this argument was going on between Lyle and Mom?
I was standing behind Lyle, just sort of watching.
Is that a position you had taken in the past in that family?
Yes,
Would you stand behind Lyle while he was fighting your battles?
yeah, I used to stand behind Lyle a lot. That's pretty much my fixed position.
All right, the objection is sustained. The answer is stricken, and we've asked the witness also to speak up.
Now, were there occasions other than this one when your brother was speaking on your behalf and you were standing behind him?
Yes,
Wait for a question, okay?
sorry.
Do you remember when? When these other occasions
Yes.
were? Okay. And can you tell us?
That happened all of my life,
Starting at what age?
from the time I can remember.
Have you heard yourself described in this trial, Mr. Menendez, as a fearful, shy child?
Yes,
Were you?
yes.
And did you think your brother was like you or dissimilar to you in that regard?
He was braver than me. I'm not sure why, but he was.
And did you, when you were younger, say around the age of 13, 14, seek out his help when you were afraid?
Yes,
And was that help with respect to your parents?
yes,
And did he help you?
yes. I mean, it depended on what was happening. But
What do you mean by that? Whether he was able to help you depended on what was happening?
whether or not he'd interfere, he wouldn't interfere with me if it was Dad doing something to me or being violent to me or yelling at me. He really wouldn't get involved. Sometimes he'd try to help me if I'm just having an argument at the dinner table or something. But other than that, he didn't interfere too much.
Well, was it, in your opinion, was it safe for him to interfere when your father was being violent or angry?
I wouldn't have wanted to interfere.
Well, my question was,
No, it wasn't. It wasn't safe.
now what was the subject matter of the argument between your mother and your brother in the guest house Thursday night?
Her knowing about Dad and I.
Did she deny it?
No.
Did she acknowledge knowing?
Yes.
And did Lyle say anything about what she did or didn't do with respect to what she knew?
I'll ask her how could she not help me? How could she not intervene or stop it? Something along those lines.
And what did she say in response to that?
She said that no one ever helped her, and that why should she help me? That no one ever helped her in her life, and went on.
Okay. And was this something you had ever heard before from your mother, that no one ever helped her?
Yes.
Mr. Menendez, at this point, in August of 1989, did you feel that your mother had a hard time in life?
She had a miserable life.
And how did you feel about her in regards to that?
In regards to that, I felt sorry for her.
And how long had you felt sorry for her?
Since the time I can remember.
And did you feel at all responsible for her having a miserable life?
Yeah.
Did she ever tell you you were responsible?
Sometimes.
One
And
second,
did you
guys.
believe her?
Yes.
And how would she tell you that you were
Ah,
responsible?
sorry about
What did
that.
she say you had done?
Sorry, guys. Had to get up for a really quick thing. All right. I might rewind just a second because I totally paused it in the middle of a question here, I think. Okay. We'll go back like 20 seconds.
That, I felt sorry for her.
And how long had you felt sorry for her?
Since the time I can remember.
And did you feel at all responsible for her having a miserable life?
Yeah.
Did she ever tell you you were responsible?
Sometimes.
And did you believe her?
Yes.
And how would she tell you that you were responsible? What did she say you had done?
She would say that I was born, but she would say that I was the problem in her life, and that Lyle and I had ruined her life, and she wanted to do other things, but then she had children, and it just destroyed what she wanted to do in her life.
And how did that make you feel?
Just real sad.
So you felt sorry for her because of that?
I felt sorry for her for that and a lot of other reasons.
On this night, Thursday night, after you found out that she had known what had happened to you, when she was saying, "No one ever helped me in my life," did you feel sorry for her then?
No.
Over the course of the preceding few months, did you have some perception that your mother had some kind of knowledge about you?
Yes.
And would you tell us what it was you were seeing or hearing or knowing?
Just that she had this power, it seemed, this magic thing, that she always knew whatever I was doing or wherever I was going, and pretty much everything about me that I didn't understand.
Were you prone to did you from time to time keep a diary?
Yes.
And where ordinarily did you keep your diary?
In my bedroom.
And were you having some problems that year with your diary?
Yeah, I kept losing them.
You lost them?
They just were disappearing on me. I didn't know what was happening.
Were you taking them out of the house?
No.
Did you take them to school?
No.
Did you take them to tennis practice?
No.
But were you having trouble finding them?
Yes.
Did it ever occur to you that your mother might have been taking your diaries?
No.
Were there things that your mother seemed to know that were not in your diaries?
Yes.
What kinds of things?
Just where I was playing tennis, or if a day I wasn't going to go to school to play tennis, or this girl that I liked, where she lived, who she was even, and just different things that I never told her about and she couldn't have known, and she knew.
She knew them?
Yeah.
She'd make remarks to you that told you that she knew them?
Yes.
Did you have any idea how it was that she knew these things that you weren't telling her?
No, I had no idea. It was really strange to me.
Did it make her seem strange to you?
Yeah. Well, a lot of things made her seem strange to me, but all that she knew was really weird. It was different.
Now, over the course of several months before this Thursday night, had there also been discussion about your mother poisoning the family?
Well, there hadn't been too much discussion about it, but that's what she had said.
She said that?
Yeah.
Did your father ever tell you that she was likely to do that or might do that?
Yes.
And did that develop any sense of fear in you about your mother?
Sort of. I had a lot of fear about my mother.
Well, let's talk first about the poisoning thing. Were you afraid of her because of that?
Partly.
Were you afraid of her because she seemed to have magical knowledge?
Partly.
And were there other reasons why you were afraid of her?
Yes.
And what did those have to do with?
Just the fact that she was real moody and she would change from one mood to another. She would be in a normal state, and then she would just start yelling and throwing her arms around and throwing things, and then she would switch back to her other mood.
So did you know what? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
She would disappear a lot. I didn't know where she was going.
Well, but my question was, why did that make you afraid?
Because she was unpredictable.
Were you afraid of her being angry? Were you afraid of her hurting you? Were you afraid of her hurting herself? What was the nature of your fear before Thursday night?
Basically those two, afraid of her hurting herself, and from all the suicide letters and her talking about how she didn't want to be alive.
What else?
And her afraid of hurting me.
Now, when you found out on Thursday that she knew what had been happening to you, how did that, if at all, influence the way you felt about or thought about your mother?
I'm sorry.
Did you not hear?
No, I
Okay,
didn't.
we'll do it again. You learned on Thursday night for the first time that your mother knew what your father had been doing to you.
Yes.
And over the years, Mr. Menendez, from when you were 6 until you were 18, did your mother ever do anything to interfere with your father's sexual molestation of you?
No.
Did she ever come into a room when he was there doing it to you?
No.
Did she ever ask you why you were crying, if you cried afterwards?
No.
Did she ever do anything to help?
No.
And over the course of all of those years, did you believe she was ignorant of it?
Yes.
Now, on this Thursday night, you find out she knew.
Yes.
How does that make you feel about her?
You asking in the present tense or at the time?
At the time, Your Honor. At the time.
It made me real confused. It made me really angry. It made me feel like she knew all the time and she never helped me, and that she betrayed me. It made me, I can't describe how it made me feel.
Did it make you wonder if you knew her?
No, I thought I didn't know her.
Objection overruled.
Had you always thought you didn't know her, or was this the thought that night?
That was a thought that night.
That you didn't know who she was?
I didn't know who she was.
And was that at all frightening?
That was very scary. Just the fact that she knew and she never did anything was scary.
Now, at some point, did the argument between your mother and your brother end?
Yes.
And did she leave the guest house?
Yes.
And then did you have a discussion with your brother?
Yes.
And do you recall the first thing that came up in the discussion with your brother?
Yes.
What was that?
I asked him what in the world was going on. What is happening? Why all this was happening?
Okay. Were you trying to find out something?
Yeah, I asked him how his talk with Dad went and why Dad was so angry. I told him that Dad was angry. And
Okay, well, slow down for a second, okay? You asked him, why was this happening?
yes.
Did you also tell him anything about what had happened to you?
Not yet.
Okay, so first you want to know what the conversation was like?
Yes.
And do you at some point tell him that your father was angry and had demonstrated his anger against you in the bedroom?
Yes, he wanted to know before anything. He wanted to know what had just happened.
So that's what I'm trying to figure out, okay? What was the first part of the conversation? Was it Lyle trying to find out why are you and Mom running to the guest house, or Was it you trying to find out what happened with Dad?
Well, it was me trying to find out what happened with Dad, and Lyle saying, no, first tell me about what happened with me.
Okay, so did you tell him what had happened with you?
Yes.
And did you tell him about your conversation with your mother?
Yes.
Okay, and then where did your conversation with your brother go?
He told me about his conversation. He told me about what happened with Dad.
And what of significance did he tell you about his conversation with Dad?
He told me that things didn't go well in the conversation and that he had basically threatened him.
And how did you react to hearing that Lyle had threatened your father?
I couldn't believe it. I was not happy. I started yelling. I started saying, you threatened Dad? Are you crazy? And
Why couldn't you believe it?
well, I could believe it, but I thought it was the stupidest thing in the world that you could possibly do is to threaten Dad. And
had there been any discussions before Thursday night about what Lyle should or should not do in the conversation with your father?
Vaguely.
Did you think before Thursday night that Lyle would threaten your father?
No. I didn't know exactly what he was going to do, but I figured that if he was so optimistic, he had a reason to be optimistic, and that he wasn't going to go in and say what he said.
Now, what was the nature of the threat as you understand it from what Lyle told you?
Just that if Dad ever touched me again, that Lyle would tell everyone.
And why did it concern you that he had said that?
Because you don't go and threaten Dad, and especially what Dad had just done to me. I couldn't believe it.
All right, well, how did you think your father would react to a threat to expose him publicly as a child molester?
He would not react well.
What does that mean?
He would kill you. He would not permit you to do that.
Was your father a person concerned with his public image?
Yes.
What about your mother?
Yes.
And how do you know that?
Because they had talked about it, and they had talked about it with me since I was in Muncie.
From the time you were a child, were there things that you were told to hide or conceal or lie about to strangers to make your family look good?
Yes.
Was that routine?
Yes.
Were you even told to lie and hide things from the rest of the family to make your immediate family look good?
Sustained.
Do you recall your mother ever talking to you about what to do with your school books or your homework when you went to see your Aunt Terry?
Yeah, when I went to my Aunt Terry, she told me specifically not to mention my grades. And that if I did, to tell her that I was just getting A's, and to hide my books in a corner somewhere where I knew where I could get them, and I knew if they were touched.
Okay, and did you understand why it was your mother was telling you to do this with your Aunt Terry?
Yes.
Why?
I thought that she just didn't feel that I was getting good enough grades and didn't want anyone to know the grades I was getting.
Now, had you also heard in your family, from your mother and your father, statements about how your family compared to other families?
Yes.
And what was it that they would say about your family?
Well, they said our family
Overall.
Was this great thing, and this with a lot of ancestry, and that it was going to be a huge family and successful, and they didn't want anything to diminish that.
Better than other people? Was that the message?
Yes.
Is there any doubt in your mind that your father felt superior to everybody else?
No, he definitely did.
And were there things that your mother said and did that made you think she also felt that she was superior to other people?
I knew that she felt that way. I don't know that there's things that she said. I assume I don't remember at the moment.
Sustained. The answer is stricken.
Okay. You knew that she felt that way. How did you know she felt that way?
The way she felt about being superior?
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember right now.
Okay. Well, this example that you gave us of what you were supposed to do with your Aunt Terry, okay? Did that tell you anything about your mother wanting people to think you were superior?
Well, I certainly knew that she didn't want anyone to know the flaws or the bad things in the family. and she wanted the family. That was very clear.
All right, so we're back to Thursday night, and you're having this conversation with your brother. And do you tell him, do you share with him your opinion of what this threat to your father now means? What's going to happen?
Oh, I thought we were going to die. And I told him that after I had just gotten to the guest house. I told him that Dad's going to kill us because of what Dad said to me. And
Yeah.
I was just
Yeah.
I was just sitting on the couch with my hands in my head saying, we're going to die. We're going to die. I can't believe this. I can't believe you did this.
Now, kids often say, I mean, you're familiar with kids saying, oh, my father's going to kill me. Oh, my parents are going to kill me. Is that what you're talking about?
No. Dad was going to kill us. I thought for sure that Dad was going to. I couldn't believe what Lyle had done and how it was just all messed up. Everything was gone. It wasn't me going to Princeton or him coming to UCLA. It was Dad.
Well, what did he tell you that your father had said? Now, Lyle told you that he had threatened your father.
Mm-hmm.
What did he tell you about your father's response to the threat?
Dad said that he was going to tell everyone anyway.
I don't understand.
Dad thought that Lyle was going to tell everyone anyway, whether he touched me or not again. That's what Lyle said.
And what else did Dad tell him? Do you remember?
He told him that I don't remember the details.
Do you remember your brother testifying that your father said that you had made your choice and he had made his?
Yes.
Remember that testimony?
Yes.
Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, Lyle told me all about the conversation. I don't remember exactly what he told me that night versus what he testified here, but I heard all of that in the conversation.
So where did your conversation with your brother go after he had told you what had happened in the conversation with your father? What happened then?
Well, I was really panicking. I was crying and getting hysterical, and Lyle was trying to calm me down. But I would look at him, and he looked afraid, and that just got me worse because if Lyle was afraid, I was really afraid. And so he was just saying, it's going to be okay. We'll think. Don't worry about it, and trying to calm me down.
Okay, and did you then have a conversation, as he has previously testified, about what could you do now?
Yes.
Okay, and what were the different things that you considered?
He said, we got to get out of here. We gotta leave the house and just get away.
So one of the things was to just leave the house that night.
Yes.
And did you agree or disagree with him?
I said, you're crazy. We can't go anywhere. Where are we going to go?
And well, what was your concern, if any, if you had left the house that night?
My concern?
You just learned that your brother had basically threatened to tell on your father.
Yes.
If the two of you disappeared that night, did you have in mind anything that your father might think about that?
Well, I thought Dad was going to kill us, and no matter where we went, anywhere, he was going to kill us. He obviously, my dad thought that Lyle and I were going to go tell somebody.
So if you left the house that night, what do you think your dad would have thought?
That we were going to tell.
That you had gone to tell?
I don't know if we had gone to tell that instant, but that we were definitely going to tell.
Now, in addition to talking about leaving the house that night, was there any discussion about running away permanently?
Yes, that's what he was talking about.
Okay. Well, you recall your brother testified that there were really two separate discussions, one about let's get out of here right now,
Well,
and the other was what can we do to avoid this threat in the future?
Lyle was really concerned that they were going to come kill us right then. And we locked the door and we checked the outside to see if anyone was coming. And then he said, we got to leave. We got to get out of this house. And I said, well, where are we going to go? He says, we got to get away.
Okay. Now, in your mind, you think he's talking about running away like impermanently?
Yes.
And did you agree with him? Good, let's go do that.
No, there was no chance of that.
Now, why did you think then there was no chance of that?
because of things that my dad had told me and who my dad was. And there was no place in this world that my dad was going to find us with this information that I had. And he knew that I wasn't the most stable person and that I could just tell if I knew he was chasing me. And
What do you mean you weren't the most stable person? In the context of this family, okay, what was wrong with you? Why do you think your dad didn't think you were stable?
Dad didn't think much of me. He didn't think I was very bright. He didn't think that he thought I was too sensitive. He didn't think I was strong enough. He thought that I gave in too easily. And
Gave in too easily to what?
In arguments, in fights.
Were you too emotional?
Yeah.
Were you not in control of feelings?
Yeah, that's what he thought. I remember he said that there was a gang fight once where a group of kids came over to our high school and I was on the tennis court and I got beat up. And he really was angry at me for that. He just thought that I wasn't who he wanted Lyle to be. And so I was thinking that if I ran away, he would find me. He would come after me for that reason.
In your family, based on what you heard your father say over the years, was it a positive trait to be sensitive, to be emotional, to express feelings, to feel pain? Was that a positive thing or a negative thing?
That was extremely negative.
Was it a sign of weakness or strength to be in touch with emotions?
Weakness.
Now, your mother, was she an emotional person?
Very emotional.
And did she seem to have feelings and express at least her own pain?
She expressed it a lot.
And did your father ridicule her for that?
He ridiculed her to her and to us.
He talked about her behind her back to you?
Yes.
And did you get the clear idea that both you and your mother were in the emotional, not to be trusted column?
Yeah, I worked hard at not being emotional. I worked hard at trying to not cry and to hold back my feelings. And I tried and I did well at times, but not enough.
You've heard a whole bunch of witnesses come in here and talk about you crying all the time, right?
Yeah.
You think you were very successful with...
No, I wasn't successful enough.
Let me show you something, in fact, if I could.
All right, it's marked 266.
Mr. Menendez, I'm showing you this document, and just so you know what you're looking at, this is not an original document. This is a photocopy of a postcard.
Yes.
You understand that? And if you would just read it to yourself.
Okay.
And who is it written to?
To me.
And who is it from?
Daddy.
Daddy?
That's what it says. Dad.
And who is Daddy?
Dad.
Your father.
Yes.
And would you just, first of all, does he spell your name right?
No, he misspells it.
Now, would you read out loud just the first sentence?
Dear Erik, I trust that you are not crying much.
And do you know how old you were when your father wrote this postcard to you, trusting that you weren't crying as much?
I think I was in Muncie. I don't know.
Muncie?
Probably.
How old were you when you moved from Muncie?
I'm not sure when he wrote me this.
Okay.
I was 6 or 6.5, 7.
Now, when you would cry in front of your father, how would he deal with it?
He'd either hit me or put me in my room.
Would he ridicule you for it?
Yes.
Would he tell you not to do it like he's telling you in that postcard?
He'd call me names. He'd call me a sissy and a crybaby, and he'd just ban me to my room.
Yeah, the whole it's very strange that he misspelled his son's name. I mean, you know, I feel like a lot of people have experienced when like their parent forgets their birthday or mixes up their birthday or something like that. Like that's something that can happen, but like the name, that's something that's a little strange to have misspelled his first name. Yeah, I don't know. There's something about that kind of hits.
Now, returning to that Thursday night, you and your brother discussed the possibility of running away,
Yes.
and you didn't think you could do that.
No, I did not think I could.
What other possibilities did you discuss?
Going to the police, going to the relatives, just anything we could think of.
And now your brothers described this conversation already about why you didn't feel the police would be a viable option. Do you agree with what he said?
Oh, I'm the one that told him we could not go to the police.
Okay. And why did you tell him? What was it you were telling him about why you couldn't go to the police?
That the police weren't going to be able to protect us from Dad. That there was no chance that the police were going to be able to do anything. And
Let me ask you something. Had you, over the course of your life, ever seen anybody stand up successfully to your father?
No.
Had you seen anybody ever try?
Yes.
Who was that?
A car salesman at a BMW dealership.
Okay, and what was the outcome of that attempt?
The car salesman started to cry.
Grown man?
Yeah.
Did you ever see your father afraid of anybody?
No.
Did your father talk about being afraid of anybody?
No. No, he did the opposite.
He did what?
He did the opposite. He used to come home and tell us stories about how he wasn't afraid or was fearless in this or did this when most people would be afraid.
Did he ever tell you stories about how people were afraid of him?
Yes.
So you didn't feel the police could protect you from your father?
No.
And concerning the relatives, Mr. Menendez, was there any adult relative in your family that you were close to before your parents died?
No.
Are you closer to those people now than then?
Yes.
In fact, can you remember ever having any real conversations with, for example, your godmother, your Aunt Martha, before your parents died?
No.
Now, she lived in New Jersey at some point and then in Florida, is that right?
Yeah.
For the 2 years or so before your parents died, did she live in Florida?
Yes.
When you were young, between the ages, say, of 11 and 15, and living in New Jersey, did you think about what your father was doing to you on a regular basis, even when it wasn't happening?
Yes.
Did you think about it when you were around your relatives?
Yes.
Did you ever think that they knew?
Yes.
Now, do you now think that they knew?
No, they didn't know, but I was paranoid about it at the time.
What do you mean you're paranoid about it?
They would give me a look, or they would smile at me in a certain way, or say something, and I would just look at them and say, God, they know. They know.
So did you think when you were little that they were anybody that you could have turned to?
Overall.
No, not just because of that, though.
Okay. But let's fast forward now back to Thursday night. At that time, did you think that you could go to your relatives and tell them that your father was a child molester and have them protect you?
Definitely not.
Why?
Because you just didn't stand up to my dad. My relatives certainly weren't going to stand up to my dad like that. and hide us out or keep us. They admired my dad. My dad was the big figure in the family. He was the successful, admired one, and he was also the feared one. And you didn't disobey him, really.
So you didn't think any of them would stand up to him?
No, they wouldn't have.
You didn't think any of them would oppose him?
No.
And did you ever hear your other relatives actually bragging about your father? Were they proud of his accomplishments?
Everyone was proud of his accomplishments.
Now, you thought your grandmother loved you, didn't you?
My grandmother?
Yeah.
Yes.
And how did you feel about her?
I loved her.
And how did she feel about your father?
She loved my dad
More than anybody else?
more than anyone in the world.
And did you have any particular desire to tell your grandmother what had been going on?
No.
So where did the conversation with your brother Lyle lead to Thursday night?
It led to us having to buy guns. Led to Lyle saying, we got to protect ourselves. We got to do something. Because I kept eliminating all of his options.
Okay, he was coming up with options.
Yeah, I was pretty much just crying and doing whatever I was doing. He was saying, well, what if we could do this? Well, what if we do that? He said, calm down, we'll work it out. And I was just not being very helpful.
Did you think any of the options would work?
No.
So a decision was made to try to protect yourselves yourself. Is
Yes.
that it? And on that night, on Thursday night, when you were talking to your brother about what might happen, you were talking about the fact that Dad would kill you. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you think your mother would stop him?
Oh, I thought my mom would do it with him. There wasn't no one and the other.
Why did you think your mother would do it with him?
Because that's who my mom was. They were very much of a team. Besides the fact that my mom hated us, they were a team.
Were you so sure that your mother hated you before Thursday night as you were after?
After, I definitely knew. I mean, for her to have known all those years, I knew she must have hated me, but I thought it before as well.
Now, what did you do after you and Lyle decided that you would try to protect yourselves and buy guns? Where did you remain, or where did you stay that Thursday night?
I stayed in the front section of the guest house. The front section of the guest house.
Are there 2 rooms upstairs in the guest house?
Yes.
What is the front section?
It's like a little couch and a two chairs, like a little living room.
A living room.
Mm-hmm.
You stayed there, and Lyle stayed in the bedroom.
Yes.
How much sleep do you think you got that night?
Not much.
Now, do you recall whether or not that night you had a familiar nightmare?
Yes.
And had you been having nightmares for some period of time up till then in your life?
Yes.
How long?
Since I was in Pennington. Since I lived in Pennington.
Back up from the mic a little
Since
bit.
I lived in Pennington.
Since you first moved to Pennington?
I don't know how much they were happening in Muncie, but I think they started in Pennington.
Okay.
One thing that's interesting about the whole popping of the mic thing is, when he says it and he pops the mic, then he repeats himself. It's like he tries again. He tries to do it again so he can do it perfectly, do it exactly the way that it needs to be done. It's interesting to me that he doesn't just say like, "Oh, sorry," and then moves on. He wants to say it, and he wants to say it correctly, as so to speak. So that's interesting to me. It just, I don't know, it says something about like what kind of person he is and who he is a little bit, like what's on the inside of his brain, I guess. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting. Let's continue.
Okay. You lived somewhere else between Muncie and Pennington. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I don't remember that house too well.
Okay. In 1978, we've heard here is when you moved to Pennington in the fall of 1978. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So do you think you were having nightmares from the very beginning, or they started up sometime after you moved there, or what?
I think they started up sometime after I moved.
Your Honor, if we're going to take a break, this would be a convenient time.
All right, we'll take a recess and resume at 20 minutes after the hour. Please don't discuss this case with anyone or form any final opinions about it, and we'll resume at 3:20.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Whoa.
Mr. Menendez, I want to back up for a moment. You recall you were telling us before how your mother seemed to know things that you couldn't find a logical or rational reason for her to know. Remember that?
Yes.
After your parents died, did you find something in your parents' bedroom that made you understand how it was that she knew everything?
Yes.
And is there a photograph in front of you on the witness stand right now that shows you where it was in your parents' bedroom that you found this thing?
Yes.
And can you describe for the juries where it was?
Under my mother's nightstand.
And what was it you found?
Tape recording with a phone jack in it.
Your Honor, I have an envelope marked 267. It's been shown to Mr. Carino. An envelope and contents. Mr. Menendez, would you circle the entire nightstand so that now, where in relation to the nightstand was this tape recorder and phone jack?
Was right underneath.
On the left side, the right side?
The right side if you're facing the nightstand.
Okay. And show me what's contained in the envelope marked 267. Do you know what that is?
Yes, this was the telephone hook device to the recorder.
Okay. And does that particular device have a telephone jack attachment?
Yes.
You've just pulled that out?
Yes.
And where did the other parts go? Do you remember?
One, I guess they both, this one went into the recorder, I think. I'm not quite sure exactly what this went into.
Okay. Now, you also told us, did you find tape recordings after your parents died that told you what that recorder was used for?
Yes, I did.
And whose voices were on the tape recordings that you found?
Mine.
And who else?
Whoever I was talking to. They were just tape recordings of my phone conversations.
They were tape recordings of phone calls to your number?
Anytime the phone was picked up, apparently, the tape recording went on because I could hear the buttons being pushed on the tape recorder.
All right. If you listen to the question, were they tape recordings of incoming calls to you and outgoing calls from you, both?
Yes.
And could you tell by listening to some of the tapes how far back these recordings went?
I heard one that went back to the winter, but there were so many tapes I didn't look at them all.
Went back to the winter of 88, 89?
Yes.
And did you ever play or show any portion of those tapes to any friends of yours?
Yes.
Do you remember who you might have played any portions of them for?
I know I played a portion to Danny Roberts.
Was he a friend of yours from Beverly Hills High School?
Yes.
Did you keep those tape recordings of your phone calls?
No, I threw them all away.
When you found them, did it explain what you thought was magical powers on the part of your mother?
Yes.
Now, returning for a moment to Thursday night, in addition to what you have told us about what your brother Lyle related to you concerning his conversation with your father, okay, did Lyle also tell you that your father had basically said that he was going to go on doing whatever he was doing with you.
Yes.
And did Lyle express some kind of reaction that he had or that he was feeling to your father saying, basically, I'll molest whoever I want to molest?
Yes.
And what was...
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Did he tell you that your father said that, that you were his son and he'd do whatever he wanted?
Whatever he wanted with me. Yes, Lyle said he threatened him at that point. I don't know if he used...
Lyle said who threatened at that point?
Lyle threatened Dad.
Okay. All right. Now, what was Lyle expressing to you on Thursday night about how he reacted to your father's basically saying he would continue?
How he reacted in the room with my father or in the room with me?
With you.
About the room with my dad?
All right. Let's start over.
In the room with me, he looked scared. He was telling me that he got angry with my dad when he was talking to my dad, though.
Did he tell you anything about how shocking or unexpected your father's response was?
That is leading.
Did he tell you why he had threatened to expose your father?
Yeah, because he was surprised by Dad's reaction. He couldn't believe how Dad was reacting to what he was saying.
So that's an example of where it kind of reminds me of like basketball when you decide you're gonna be aggressive in your play and you're gonna draw a foul. You're gonna get fouled. So but it's getting a foul is going to enable your team to do something else that is worth getting the foul for. I hope that made sense. That's kind of what's happening here with that objection. So Leslie knew that Erik was kind of getting lost in the weeds a little bit. And so she just asked a question that she knew was going to be a leading question. She had to know, right? I mean, that was very clearly a leading question because, oh, well, did Lyle talk about how much he was shocked and surprised about what, what Jose had done? And so Erik, listening to her previous question and understanding, the objection and how it had gotten sustained, he understood with that she had just flagged for him where she wanted him to go. Then when she asked a new question that was a proper question, then he says, oh yes, of course. Lyle responded that way because he was so shocked and surprised by how Jose had responded. So this is one way to kind of, bump around the rules of evidence a little bit to accomplish the ends that you're trying to accomplish when a witness is maybe struggling a little bit with that. And let me answer a couple of questions here because this is Dater had mentioned this before. It feels like Lyle was better with getting them the answer they wanted, while Erik is coming across as almost not seeing where she's going with the question. Or is it just me? He's not coming across as dumb, but more like he hasn't been practicing these questions as much. I think it's just that it could be that he is, I mean, keep in mind, he's been going at this for hours at this point. And I know this question was from earlier, but even before, like this is almost 3 hours into this session. So minus 15 minutes for the previous witness's testimony, right? Detective Zoller came in and testified for like 15 minutes. So, let's say 2 hours and 40 minutes at this point. It's a long time to be sustaining your attention and to be answering and to be in the hot seat. So it could be that he's just at times kind of struggling with his attention, struggling with incoming information. Auditory processing is an issue for him as a default. So even with Leslie asking the questions in the way that she's asking them to make it easier for him, it could still be that this is something that is straining him to be, listening and answering with that. So that could be something that he's sort of struggling with regardless. But good questions. Also, Brittany Chanel asked this earlier. Okay, another question. This case is interesting. If this happened, why not document everything? Take pictures, write down what happened. I feel sorry for the boys. Could this help them? So there were things that were documented. I mean, as I know this question came in before Erik testified to this, but he had been writing in a journal or a diary, and his mother apparently was reading it. He didn't realize until a certain point in time. And there also were photos, like I talked about before, photos, of them that are, I mean, the kind of photos that will get someone put in prison for child corn. I guess that's the term to use these days on the internet, right? Child corn. And yeah, like they're that explicit. They've shown them in the trial. I haven't shown them on screen here because I don't want my channel to get yeeted. But there are some documents that do help to corroborate these claims. However, the fact that there aren't more documents, like documents and things to make a record of it ahead of time, I think is probably actually, in some respects, you could say is actually better for the defense, because their argument here is they didn't plan anything. They didn't, this is not premeditated. None of this was planned out by them. They were just reacting to what was going on in the moment and trying to make the best decision for them and for their own safety. And basically doing the things that were necessary, that they sincerely believed were necessary, and that were actually in fact necessary. So there's multiple levels that you can agree with or disagree with there. But yeah. So, okay. But thank you so much for the question. And all right, let's continue on here.
Did Lyle indicate to you whether or not he planned to threaten your father with exposure, or just lost control of the conversation?
No, he didn't plan, at least to my knowledge, to threaten Dad.
Well, did he tell you basically he blew it? He lost it?
No, because I remember in the conversation on Wednesday, I was telling him, Lyle thought he had control of the situation. I was trying to tell him, Dad's not going to be so happy, and don't be careful. And Lyle was telling me on Thursday that he blew it, basically.
That he blew it?
Yeah.
Because he threatened to expose him?
Yeah.
Now, I was asking you just before the break about a nightmare. Was there a particular nightmare that you had many, many times in your life?
Yes.
Did you have it many times before August of 1989?
Yes.
Have you even had it many times since?
Yes.
Did you have it the night of Thursday, August 17th, 1989?
Yes.
Could you tell us briefly what that nightmare was?
It was about a green face and how it changed into becoming Dad chasing me through this darkness.
And was this dream about a green face that chases you? You had that before?
Yes.
Was there also any animal-like figures in this dream?
Yeah, there were a cow and a horse.
And where would the cow and the horse and the green face, how did the dream begin?
Well, the dream began with me just becoming real tiny, and everything just got larger and larger, and I felt like I was disappearing. And it was real. It was terrifying. And then that disappeared, and I went into a different state. I don't know how to describe it.
Is this
Suddenly,
how the dream always was?
Yes.
It always started with you shrinking?
Yes.
And then when did green face and cow and horse show up in the dream?
Right. Well, the cow and the horse were not always in that dream. They were sometimes in different dreams. They were things that I was afraid of, along with the green face. It was pretty much the green face that would chase me most. Sometimes the cow and the horse would be the dream. Was I don't know how to describe it.
All right. Well, what would happen with the green face? You'd start to be chased by this green-faced creature.
Mm-hmm.
And when would it turn into Dad?
Almost immediately.
And did you see other people in this dream that you knew?
Yes.
Who would you see in the dream?
Alicia, Sylvia, Anna Maria.
Who are they?
My relatives.
But
My
what
cousins.
about your aunts and uncles? Would you see them too?
No.
What about your mother? Was she ever in that dream?
Yes.
Now, would these other people, your relatives and your mother, show up during the part of the dream when you're being chased?
Yes, but at different points.
Okay. How did you run to people in this dream?
I ran to my relatives and asked them if I told them that Dad was chasing me and asked them if they saw Dad, and they would say no. And I would run. I ran to Lyle, and then he would suddenly abandon me and run away.
What about Mom?
I would run to Mom, but she was over the roof of the Pennington house.
In the dream, she was over the roof,
Yeah, she was sort of floating in the sky in the Pennington house.
so you couldn't get to her either.
No, I tried.
And how would this dream end?
With me falling off the roof in the Pennington house.
And is that the version of the dream that you had Thursday night?
Yes.
Now, on Friday, did you hear your brother testify that you went with him to a gun store, a Big Five in Santa Monica, and
Yeah.
inquired about buying handguns?
Yes.
And were told that there was a 2-week waiting period.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes.
Did you do that?
Yes.
Before you left the house to go to that gun store, had you been on the tennis court practicing?
Yes.
And did your brother have a conversation with you to get you to stop practicing and do something else?
Yes.
Now, did you hear your brother testify that he said something like, just because it's a new day doesn't mean things are okay?
That's basically what he said.
Okay. What were you saying to him that made you say that? What were you saying to Lyle that made him say that to you?
Well, he came over to the tennis court and asked if I was ready to go. And I said, no. I said something like, I'm playing tennis. I got a tournament coming up. I don't really feel like it. And he said something like, I realize this is hard to think about, but this is real. This isn't something that's going to go away. This is serious. And I just didn't want to deal with it.
Well, what were you thinking? Was it a sunny Friday morning?
Yes.
And what were you thinking that morning about whether it was real?
I thought it was real, but it seemed like a bad dream the night before. The next morning, the sun was out, the birds were chirping, and it just seemed like this wasn't happening, and I didn't want to think about it.
Okay. So after your brother told you that things are serious, did you have to think about it?
Yes.
And did you agree with him?
Yeah, I agreed to go.
Did you think that what had happened on Thursday, his talk with your father, your confrontation with your father, your mother telling you what she told you, did you think that was serious stuff?
Oh, I knew it was serious stuff. That's why I didn't want to think about it.
Had you spent time in earlier years when your father would threaten to do something to you if you told? Okay. Had you thought about what it was he would do?
If I told?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he told me what he would do if I told.
Told you what?
He told me that he'd kill me. He told me that he'd tie me a chair and beat me to death. He told me all sorts of things.
Did you ever picture what would happen if it came out inside the family? In other words, if you told Lyle, and if your parents found out you had told Lyle, had you ever envisioned this happening?
No.
Now, after you went to the Big Five in Santa Monica, did you drive towards in the direction of San Diego with your brother?
Soon after.
But you did take that drive?
Yes.
And when you started that drive, had there been any decision by yourself and your brother to go ahead and buy a long gun since you couldn't buy a handgun?
No.
And was there a discussion in the car after which such a decision was made?
There was discussion before the decision was made, yes.
Yes. And after that discussion, was it then that you decided you had to get a gun, even if it had to be a long gun?
Yes.
And what was the subject matter of that discussion in the car?
The things that Dad had done to me.
The sexual things and other things?
Yes.
And was this the first time that you were actually telling your brother what had happened?
Yeah, the details of what had happened.
Did you tell him all the details of everything that happened for 12 years?
No, definitely not.
Basically, what did you tell him about the sex itself? Do you recall?
Objection, hearsay.
It's not offered for the truth, Your Honor.
Well, at this point, there is no request for the substance of it, just whether he recalls. So the objection is overruled to the form of the question.
What's the question again?
All right. Do you remember? This is just a preparatory question. Do you remember what you told your brother about what the nature of the sexual activity between yourself and your father had been?
Yes.
Okay. What did you tell him the nature of the sexual activity had been?
Objection, hearsay.
Objection sustained as to the form of the question is calling for hearsay.
It's not being offered for the truth, Your Honor, but to explain Lyle Menendez's state of mind and why he formed the opinion that his father was sick, which he testified to.
All right, the objection is overruled. It will be received only as it might reflect upon the state of mind of the person hearing the statement and as to what, if any, state of mind he had in reaction to it.
Okay, so just so you guys understand that objection was hearsay, and remember the definition of hearsay is an out of court statement offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted. So what an essential part of understanding that is, why is it being offered? Why is Leslie asking Erik to tell the jury about what he told Lyle? Is it because he's telling it because, you know, he's offering it for the truth, or is it being offered for some other reason? And here Leslie said it's not being offered for the truth of like what happened to Erik. Rather, it's being offered to explain Lyle's mental state and Lyle's reaction and what Lyle did afterwards. And that is a valid reason. Judge overruled Kuriyama's objection to that question. So he's going to allow him to testify as to what he told Lyle as a result.
All right, do you understand the question?
Yes.
Okay. Can you answer the question?
I told him that it was basically oral sex that was happening.
Okay. And did you tell him anything about any kind of violence that would accompany it or any kind of threats from your father?
Yes.
And what did you tell him about violence?
I told him that there were pins and tacks that Dad would stick in me and use.
Pins
Could you
and
speak up, please?
That Dad would stick in me and use.
Pins and tacks?
Yes.
And did you give him the impression that these pins and tacks were being used during oral sex?
Yes.
And in fact, was that something that did happen between yourself and your father when you were a teen?
Yes.
And what, if anything, did you tell him about any weapons that your father ever threatened you with?
I told him that he threatened me with a knife.
Now, Mr. Menendez, do you remember the kind of knife that your father threatened you with?
Yes.
What kind was it?
It was a jagged knife.
A what?
A jagged knife on one end. It was a Rambo knife.
A Rambo knife.
Yeah, a knife that he had.
Your father's company, did you understand that your father's company was partly owned by the company that made the Rambo movies?
Yes.
And was there a promotional item, a knife, like the knife Rambo uses in the movie, that your
Yes.
father received?
Yes.
And was that knife kept in the Beverly Hills and Calabasas houses?
It almost sounds like he's saying that the movie prop was used, like he used the Rambo knife movie. Like that's not exactly what he's saying, but it's a promotional item that was used for it. But holy crap, that makes me think of Rambo a little differently. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with Rambo, but you know, the knife is pretty well known in that movie if you've seen it. But that's crazy. Ugh. Brittany Chanel wants to know what's Rambo. Rambo is a series of movies starting in the 1980s. Sylvester Stallone starred in it. So this is at the time when we had the big action hero movies. We had Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger were like in their absolute prime, competing against one another for ultimate domination in film in America, all about big muscles and sweat and manliness and explosions and roar, all the things. So big guns, big knives, all that kind of stuff. So a Rambo knife, I'm sure we could probably pull up a picture, but somebody said that it was entered into evidence. Your Everyday Sheep says it was entered into evidence in the second trial. It's a real knife. It's a big knife. It's a big knife. So terrifying, but it's like I there's a part of me, that's what I meant to say at the beginning of this interruption, is that I wonder if the promotional knife was an actual prop. Like, how crazy is it if that's an actual movie prop that Sylvester Stallone that's like connected in here? Blah. Okay, let's continue on.
Yes.
And is that what he used to threaten you?
Yes.
And was that the knife you were referring to earlier when you said there was one occasion when you said no? And
Objection sustained.
was there an occasion when you said no?
Yes.
Was there a knife used on that occasion?
Yes.
What knife was that?
The Rambo knife.
When you were telling your brother about a knife, was it that occasion you were talking about or some other occasion?
That occasion.
Overruled. What was your answer?
That occasion.
And did you tell your brother the specific kinds of threats that your father had made? Should you tell?
Yes.
Had your father ever threatened to hurt anyone besides you if you told someone?
Yes.
And what was that threat?
He told me that he would kill whoever I told.
He would kill whoever you told?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Menendez, on that Friday, August 18th, 1989, were you carrying Donovan Goudreau's driver's license with you?
Yes.
Excuse me. How long had you carried it up to that point?
A few months.
Were you in New Jersey when your Aunt Terry was cleaning out Lyle's college room?
Yes.
Were you aware that she found Donovan's license?
Yes.
Did you receive his license in New Jersey or back in California?
In Jersey.
And what purpose, if any, did you use that license before August 18th, 1989?
To get into a nightclub here and there.
Did you have another ID that was fake?
Yes.
And what name was that ID in?
Richard Stevens.
And did you know a Richard Stevens?
No, it was a fake ID.
Well, was there such a person once upon a time, do you think?
Possibly. Not that I knew.
How did you get a license in the name of Richard Stevens?
Oh, they had birth certificates at the high school in Calabasas. Many kids had them.
They had birth certificates?
Birth certificates that you would take to the DMV and just say, you're this person, and they give you an ID.
Were these real
Oh.
birth certificates, fake birth certificates? You didn't know.
I think they were fake.
But you used such a fake birth certificate to get a license in the name of Richard Stevens.
Yes.
With whose picture on it?
My picture.
And what address?
I don't remember.
A fake address?
I think so. I'm not sure.
And what date of birth?
Over 21. I don't remember the date of birth.
Would it be based on the fake birth certificate, what the date of birth was?
Yes.
And did you carry that one around with you all the time?
No.
Why not?
Because I didn't want to lose it. I mean,
Why?
I had lost my wallet before, and I had lost my cousin of mine's ID that I had used then. So I was without one. And when I got the Stevens one, I just kept it in my bedroom for safekeeping.
Did you ever take it out of your bedroom?
Yeah, when I knew I was going to go to a nightclub or I knew I was going to need it, then I'd take it.
Did you consider that a better fake ID than Donovan's?
Well, that one was real.
Well, how could it be real?
Well, it had my signature and it had my picture. So it was a real DMV license. So, I mean, it was real.
Well, Donovan's was real too. It was just real for him.
It was real for him, but, I looked like Donovan, but I wasn't Donovan, and I wasn't 6'1" or whatever his height was.
So you didn't really match the description or entirely match the appearance on Donovan's license? Is that what you're saying?
No, not as well as my own description.
Okay. And the Richard Stevens license had your description, your picture.
Yes.
Did your mother know that you were getting this Richard Stevens license?
Yes, she told me how to do it.
She told you how to do it.
I had to go to the DMV and get it made.
So did she know you had this fake birth certificate and were intending to do this?
Yes.
Now, what about a real Erik Menendez driver's license? Was there such a thing in existence?
Once upon a time.
I mean, were you licensed by the state of California? Yes. And it wasn't suspended or revoked at that time, was it?
No.
But where was your license?
I had lost it with my wallet.
And in fact, in July of 1989, did you receive a traffic ticket citing you for, among other things, having no license in your possession?
Yes.
Now, do you remember if on July 7th, 1989, when you got that ticket, were you carrying either the Richard Stevens ID or the Donovan Control ID?
I was carrying Donovan's.
And why didn't you show that to the policeman who stopped you?
Because it wasn't my license.
So you didn't want to show him a completely false license for this ticket?
No.
Let me have a moment, John. I have another one-page document. Appears to be a Department of Motor Vehicles handout. I believe that would be 268.
Yes.
Mr. Menendez, showing you the last entry on this computer driving record. Do you see a ticket that you received on July 7th, 1989?
Yes.
And you see there are 3 violations there.
Yes.
Okay. Excuse me, Mr. Kuriyama, are the people willing to stipulate that one of those violations, section 12951A of the California Vehicle Code, is for having no license in one's possession?
Such a way.
Thank you. Mr. Menendez, you recall when you were in San Diego that you went to 2 different places down there that sold guns.
Yes.
Can I get you to stop reading that? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. And did you learn after going to the first place that you'd need something in order to purchase even shotguns?
Yes.
What would you need?
Driver's license.
And you had Donovan's with you?
Yes.
Had you ever signed Donovan's name? Had you ever used the license in a way that required you to sign his name?
No.
Did you know whether or not you would have to do that when you bought guns?
No, I wasn't sure.
Did you think you might?
I thought I might.
Did you think you might need some address other than the address on Donovan's license to buy guns in San Diego?
I thought I might.
And what was the general area? First of all, did you notice Donovan's address on the license?
Sure.
Was it the San Diego or Los Angeles area?
No.
What did you do, if anything, in order to come up with a local address?
I looked in a telephone book.
And where were you when you looked in the telephone book?
I had a restaurant, and I think it was Bob's Big Boy. I'm not sure.
A semi-fast food restaurant?
Yeah, like a Denny's type of thing.
And was this in the San Diego area?
Yes.
Was this before or after you went to the first gun store down there?
This was after.
And you looked in the book to find an address?
Yes.
And later on, when you were inside the Big Five, did you remember that address that you had looked at in the book?
No.
So what did you do to give the saleswoman an address when you were in the Big Five?
I just signed August.
Why?
because it was the month of August. I couldn't think of anything else to do.
You had forgotten what you had seen?
I'd forgotten the address that I was supposed to use, so I just used August.
This seems like something that an 18-year-old boy would do, or an 18-year-old young man would do, right? Like, like it's kind of a stupid move. You know, like you could think like Main Street or Elm Street or like some kind of other street that you've seen someplace. You know that street names can be repeated from city to city, especially across like Southern California. So just going with August Street is kind of funny because it's like, because it happens to be August. It's kind of silly. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't impact credibility, but it does seem like something that forgive me, a dumb 18-year-old would do. It's just kind of silly to me.
And what about for the number? Where'd you get the number from?
I just made it up.
Now, did you give the saleswoman the information that Donovan Goudreau was born in Burlingame, California?
Yes.
Do you recall Mr. Goudreau testifying here that he was born in Glenora, California?
No, but
You don't remember that?
no.
Now, had you been to Burlingame, California that summer?
Yeah, that's where I played tennis.
That's in July?
Yes.
And did you believe that Mr. Goudreau was born in Northern California?
Yes.
And was Burlingame in Northern California?
Yes.
Is that why you used it?
Yes.
Now, when you were at the restaurant, at some point, did you try to write Mr. Goudreau's signature?
Yes.
Did you practice?
Yes.
How many
Objection on
times?
leading.
Sustained. Counsel, ask your next question.
Did you eat at the restaurant?
Yes.
And you told us you looked in the phone book?
Yes.
What else did you do?
I practiced the signature
How many times did you practice the signature? I mean, how many times did you write it?
like 4 or 5 times.
Did you do anything else while you were at the restaurant? Did you use the restrooms? Did you go outside to make a phone? Did you do anything?
I ate. I don't really remember what else I did.
What about your brother? Do you remember what, if anything, he did at the restaurant?
I don't remember.
Was he with you all the time, or did he leave you at some point?
No, he left me a lot.
Do you know what he was doing?
I don't quite know.
Well, do you know if he went to the restroom?
I guess that's where he was going.
How long did it take the two of you to drive down to San Diego from Santa Monica?
2.5, 3 hours.
Yeah.
And then you went
That's
to
all
a
right.
gun store,
Yes.
and then you went to this restaurant,
Yes.
and then you ate.
Yes.
Do you believe your brother ate?
Yes.
Did you have anything to drink?
Yes.
Now you returned to Los Angeles Friday night,
Yes.
and you recall a conversation with your mother Friday night concerning the boat trip.
Yes.
And do you remember your brother testifying to that conversation?
Yes.
And was that essentially the way you also remembered it?
Yes.
Then let's move on to Saturday then. Do you recall on Saturday in the afternoon going to a gun store here in Van Nuys?
Yes.
How was that strike that? Who selected that gun store?
I did.
And how did you know about it?
I looked it up in the phone book.
Was there a particular reason why you selected that particular gun store?
Yes.
And what was the reason?
Because it had a firing range next to it.
And how did you know that?
because it said so in the phone book. I think there was a little picture. I'm not quite sure.
Said so in the phone book that it had a firing range?
Yes,
And why did you care if the gun store had a firing range?
because I had no idea how to fire this gun, and if I ever had to, I thought I might need to know how.
Totally a good
On
idea.
Friday, when you were coming back to Los Angeles, had you put any shells in your gun?
Yes,
How many had you put in?
2.
And were these the shells that your brother picked up off the stack in the Big Five?
Yes,
And why did you put 2 shells in the car?
so that I could see if I could load it and so that it would be loaded.
Why didn't you load it all the way?
I didn't think I'd need to.
Did you know what 2 shells could or would do to someone?
I had an idea.
Did you think that was a very dangerous thing, 2 shotgun shells in a shotgun?
Yes,
When you got to the gun store on Saturday, the one in Van Nuys, did you find something out about the firing range?
yes,
What did you find out?
that you couldn't fire off I guess, a shotgun or a rifle inside the range. You could only-
What kind of firing range was it?
It was an indoor firing range, and you could only fire off apparently handguns or something like that.
But you were told by the people at the establishment that you could not fire a shotgun at that range.
Yeah, I was told by the people across the street, I guess,
Across the street?
at the gun store. The firing range was across the street from the little gun store.
Okay. Did you make your inquiries at the gun store or at the firing range?
At the gun store.
And the people at the gun store told you you couldn't use the range for a shot.
That's right.
Had you taken the shotgun along with you?
Yes.
Had you taken it out of the car?
No.
While you were at the gun store, did you and your brother purchase different ammunition from what he had picked up from the stack at the Big Five?
Yeah, we purchased what the guy said to purchase.
And do you recall what type of ammunition it was?
I know now it was buck.
Well, what was he telling you it was? The guy at the store?
He was telling me it was buck too. I don't.
Buckshot?
Yes.
And did the guy at the store give you any explanation of what the purpose of the ammunition that you had already bought the day before was?
Yes.
And what did he tell you it was?
It was birdshot for shooting birds.
And did he tell you how that stuff worked?
Yeah, he said it spread real fast. It didn't work well for burglars. That's what he said.
And you had led him to believe that you were seeking ammunition for home protection?
Objection.
Sustained.
Why do you think he mentioned burglars?
Because we had told him that we just needed protection around the house. And so he gave us the stuff that he thought we should use.
Objection.
That is also potentially either it just happens to line up and he already had the answer ready. He knew where he was supposed to go, or he was listening very well to what Leslie was saying with her previous question. Another example of that.
It's not offered to the truth, Your Honor.
All right, it will be received only to reflect the state of mind of the witness and for no other reason.
Now, did you, after purchasing the buckshot at the, by the way, how many boxes of buckshot were purchased at the Van Nuys gun store?
1.
And how many rounds, if you remember, were in that one box?
10.
After the trip to the gun store, did you and your brother eventually get back home?
Yes.
You heard your brother testify that he sort of stalled and drove around trying on purpose to be late.
Yes.
Did that happen?
That happened after, yes.
After what?
After we went to the gun store.
Right. You didn't want to be home, did you?
No.
You didn't want to take the boat trip?
No.
Sustained.
Were you, what was your state of mind with respect to taking this boat trip?
I was very afraid of going on the boat. We did not want to go on that boat trip.
Let's stay with your state of mind, okay? Instead of using we, all right? You didn't want to go on the boat.
No.
Why didn't you want to go on the boat?
Because I wasn't sure what was going to happen on the boat. It seemed real. I was real nervous about it from the conversation the night before. And and I couldn't get a handgun like Lyle tried to ask me to. And so I was real worried about going on that trip.
Well, what was it that you thought might happen on it?
I thought we might die.
And how did you envision yourself dying on the boat trip?
I didn't know what would happen. I know that the time was changed to at night, and I wasn't real excited about going on a boat trip with my parents at that time at night.
Okay. When you got back to the house, though, were your parents still there?
Yes.
And did you go on the boat trip?
Yes.
Now, you've heard Mr. Anderson, the captain, testify to what you and your brother were doing and how you looked and what happened to you on the boat trip?
Yes.
And you've heard your brother testify to it?
Yes.
And between the two of them, have they given an accurate picture of what happened on the boat trip?
Basically.
So let's move ahead. After the boat trip, did you return with your parents to your house?
Yes.
And did you then leave the house with your brother and go somewhere?
Yes.
And where did the two of you go?
To UCLA.
And what was your state of mind at that point, given the fact that your parents didn't kill you on the boat trip?
I didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, it was a scary situation. I knew they were going to do something. They didn't do it on the boat trip like I thought they might have. And I just didn't know what was going to happen or when. And it was real nerve-wracking.
Did you have any discussion with your brother about whether the two of you were missing something or missing something that your parents were doing or overlooking something?
We didn't know what they were doing, what they were up to. They weren't talking to us. And like in the car ride, it was just quiet. And it was real.
Car ride, which car?
To and from the boat trip.
Was silent?
Was silent. And so I didn't know, I didn't understand what they were up to in their own way. And they weren't talking to us about it.
Well,
they weren't giving us the signs that I was looking for.
Okay. Well, did you think maybe you were wrong and everything was peachy and there was no problem and life would go on as usual?
No, I wasn't wrong.
Well, did you think that at all?
No.
Why not?
Because I knew what I had done, and I knew that I wasn't going to get away with it, and it was just a matter of when. And it was real clear from the way my parents were acting that something was going on.
Were they being more? Were they secretive around you ordinarily?
Yes and no.
Was this a family with great communication among its members?
No, very little communication.
Well, were they even more secretive and less communicative during these few days that we've been talking about?
Sustained.
Were they more communicative or less communicative during these few days that you've been testifying about?
They were really quiet, not saying much around us. Usually my dad was either in an up mood and laughing and joking and making fun of people with the whole family, sort of talking to my mom, but not being quiet about it. Or he was real angry and would yell or act real stern. But at this time, he just wasn't saying anything. And my mom, who was also like that, was not saying a word. It was real weird.
Well, had there been times you've described, for example, in Kalamazoo, when your father got so mad he couldn't talk, there were other times, weren't there, when your father wouldn't talk to you?
That was very unusual. And it was usually because he was so angry with me that he could not talk. But it was never like it was in Kalamazoo. That was different. But there were times when we didn't talk, but they would say something that was something, noticing something. It wasn't silence on purpose. This time it was dead silence. From
Thursday night, when you had the struggle with your father in your bedroom, until Saturday night, when you're...
Rephrase the question.
Did you have a struggle with your father in your bedroom Thursday night?
Yes.
Did you throw him off of you when he was pushing you on the bed?
Not quite like that, but I got from out from under him.
And had he pushed you when you had he grabbed you when you had gone to...
He threw me on the bed.
Was it a physical struggle?
Yes.
From that time of that physical struggle Thursday night to in the car with your parents coming back from the boat trip, had your father said one word to you?
No.
And had that ever happened before, or was that unusual?
It was extremely unusual. I mean, he had done a similar thing in Kalamazoo when, after I had lost, he got so angry he couldn't talk, and we didn't talk while packing the bags. But he would say a word, and he would do this. He told me we weren't going to Canada, for instance. But this time he didn't say a word.
Well, did he seem overtly, openly angry on Saturday?
No.
Now, on the boat, you heard testimony from the captain. Did your father ever talk to you individually or direct anything at you personally?
No.
Were there some words said, like when he caught the shark?
When he caught the shark, we went to the back. We didn't want to make it seem really suspicious. And he would say things to the boat captain, and, well, what a great shark it was.
But to you, did he say anything to you?
No.
So at UCLA, did you and your brother discuss what you should be doing with yourselves the next day, Sunday?
Yes.
And what did you discuss?
We discussed what we were going to do, and we decided that we'd just stay away from each other, and Lyle would stay home.
Why did you decide to stay away from each other?
Because we thought that if something would happen, it would happen when we were together.
Why is that?
It's just what we thought would happen, that if they were going to kill us, that they were going to do it when we were together.
And did you believe they were going to kill both of you or just you?
No, I thought they were going to kill both of us.
Even though you were the person who was the witness to your father's molestation?
That's especially why.
That they would kill both of you?
Or that they would kill me.
No, I understand they kill you. But the question is, why would they kill Lyle?
Well, because he knew he was the one apparently threatening Dad.
And had there been a threat by your dad about telling?
Yes.
And had you told Lyle that your father had said he'd kill anybody, you told?
On Friday.
Had you told Lyle?
Yes, I did.
So when you were at UCLA, there was a decision made for you to stay apart the next day.
Yes. There were different decisions made.
Did you stay apart the next day?
Yes.
What time did you leave the house on Sunday?
Around 8 o'clock.
In the morning?
Yeah.
Before you left the house, did you let your brother know you were going?
Yeah, I went over and knocked on Lyle's guest house door and told him.
Did you see your parents that morning?
No.
Now, when you knocked on Lyle's guest house door that morning, did you tell him something that had happened to you Saturday night after you got back
Yes.
from UCLA? Let's go back to Saturday night for a minute. Did something happen to both of you together after you got back from UCLA on Saturday night?
Yes.
And what was it that both of you experienced Saturday night?
An argument with my mother. My mother was yelling at us.
And in the course of that argument with your mother, did your mother say something unusual?
To me, yes.
She said it to you, or it was unusual to you, or both?
She said it to me. The other thing she said, she always said, but what she said to me was unusual.
All right. What were the other things she said that she always said?
Just that she hated us and that she wished we were never born and that we ruined her life.
Was this sort of a litany your mother would go in when she was really just real upset and just would start saying this then?
Yes.
Sustained. The answer is stricken.
When would your mother make that kind of statement?
Whenever she was upset, she could make it. Sometimes she wouldn't. Sometimes she would. Just depended how she felt, I guess.
Now, she said it about how many times do you think you heard that over the course of your life?
40, 50 times.
So it wasn't like she was telling you something. Did it seem like she was trying to tell you something, or did it seem like she was just in a habit of speech?
No, she was.
Objection calls for statement.
Did it seem like a speech habit of hers? When she said it, did she always say the exact same words?
Yes.
Now, what else did she say Saturday night that was not part of this standard upset thing that she'd say?
She told me that if I would have kept my mouth shut, things might have worked out in the family.
What did you think that meant?
That meant that things had not worked out in the family, and I believed that she was going to kill us.
Well, things had not worked out in the family, and whose fault was that?
Mine, because I had told Lyle
And keeping your mouth shut, what did you think she meant? Shut about what?
about the stuff between Dad and I, and that I had told Lyle.
And what did you think she meant by things not working out in the family? The family had had problems before, of one kind or another, like all families, hadn't it?
Objection calls for statement.
Overall.
Usually there was a lot of argument in these when she would say there had not been anything. Since Thursday night, there had been no arguments on Friday, no arguments on Saturday, and suddenly she was coming up with this statement that the family was through, and I really thought I knew what that meant.
You said the family was through. Now, she didn't say the family's through or the family's over. She said, but for what you did, things would work out.
She said that things hadn't worked out.
And did you therefore interpret that to mean the family was over?
Yes.
And did you interpret that to mean that certain members of the family were not going to be alive?
Objection being
Sustained.
How did you interpret that? What did you interpret that with respect to the various members of the family?
I thought they were going to kill Lyle and I. It seemed clear.
Now, you've told us that on Thursday night you didn't get much sleep
No.
and you had that nightmare.
Yes.
Now, on Friday night, where did you sleep?
In my bedroom.
And did you get a lot of sleep Friday night?
No.
Now, on Saturday, after this argument with your mother, by the way, what was the argument actually about with your mother when you got back to the house Saturday night from UCLA?
The fact that the door was locked.
Okay, well, why didn't you guys just unlock the door and go in?
She was saying that we should have had a key, and we were saying that, well, Lyle was saying that she didn't give us a key, and she was saying that was no excuse for not having a key.
Did you have a car?
Yes.
Did you have a key ring for your car?
Yes.
Did it have car keys on it?
Yes.
Did you have a house key on the key ring?
No.
Why?
Because she did not let me have a house key on the key ring.
Did your brother have a car?
Yes.
Did he have a key ring for his car?
I don't know.
Well, did your mother ever give either one of you a key that was your own
No.
to any house
No.
that you ever lived in?
No.
And did she make a statement ever about why you didn't have keys to the house?
I don't remember.
Do you remember how she used to refer to the houses? Were they our house or your house or my house?
No, they were her house.
Is that what she said?
Yes.
And did she ever make a statement about it being her house in connection with any discussion you ever had with her about keys?
Yes.
Okay. And what would she say in that regard?
She would say that I'm not going to give you a key to my house, and that, there's no reason for you to have a key, that you can just knock on the door.
And did that mean, Mr. Menendez, that there was no time that you could come back home from a date, from being with your friends, and get in the house if she had locked it up without her knowing it?
If I hadn't left the little door open, yes.
Okay, well, sometimes you left a door open, but if she had locked the whole house up, you couldn't get in without her knowing.
No. Except in the Calabasas house.
Did you have a special way of getting into the Calabasas house?
Yes.
How was that?
Through the upstairs window. There was a tree, I don't know how to describe it, a balcony type of thing that you would climb up the post and you could get into the window.
A thing that you grow a tree up against?
Yeah, a vine.
Trellis?
Yes.
And you could crawl in a second-story window?
Yes.
And that's how you'd get into the Calabasas house after she had locked it up?
Yes.
Okay, with respect to the Beverly Hills house, If she had locked it up and you needed to come home,
No, you couldn't get in.
you'd have to do what?
You'd have to knock on the door or ring the doorbell.
And then she'd know all
That
of
you
your
were home.
movements, right?
Yes.
Did you have a sense at any time when you were living with your parents that you had any personal privacy?
No.
Did you have a sense that your parents were not interested in every single thing you did?
Nope.
No, I thought they were interested in everything I did.
And did they require and request you to report to them about every single thing you did?
They required it.
Did you always do it?
No.
And why wouldn't you always do it?
Because I wanted to keep certain things in my life private, and certain things I just wanted to keep to myself.
Was this bad things or just ordinary things?
Just ordinary things. If I was seeing a girl or this and that, I wanted to keep it to myself.
So let's go back to the Saturday night. Neither one of you has a key. Now, there were keys in a place inside, your brother testified. You remember that?
Yes, in the kitchen.
And what was supposed to, if you took one of those keys, were you supposed to put it back?
Yes.
Couldn't keep it.
No.
And did you have difficulties with that system where to leave the house, you take a key and then you got to put it back?
Yes.
What would happen?
If we didn't put it back, she'd get very angry.
Would you lose these keys
Sometimes.
because they weren't on a key ring?
Yeah, we'd lose them, and she'd accuse us of lying and actually trying to keep the key. And so she'd get upset, and eventually she'd make another key and put it in the kitchen.
So did you take to leaving a door open when you were going out for the evening? Not one of the main doors, but some other doors?
Yes.
But would your mother, before she went to sleep, go around the house routinely and lock them all up?
Sometimes.
Sometimes she'd overlook one.
Yes.
Now, after the confrontation with your mother at the door, where did you go?
I went outside.
And did you have another discussion with your brother?
Yes.
And what was the main thing that you were discussing at that point?
That something was definitely going to happen, and for me to stay away. And I was basically saying, "Well, you better talk to him tomorrow. I want to know what's going on."
What was it that made you then say, what was it that happened in that confrontation with your mother at the door that made you say, "Wow, Lyle, something is really happening"?
What she said to me about if I would have kept my mouth shut.
Okay, so that statement added something to what you were already thinking?
Yes.
Did that make you more fearful, less fearful?
It made me a lot more fearful.
And as a consequence, did you then take something with you up to your room when you re-entered the house?
Yes.
And when you re-entered the house, now your mother had opened the door for you, right?
Yes.
And then she went back to bed?
She
or
went
wherever?
up to her room.
And did you then, when you went outside to talk to your brother again, did you close the front door?
No, we
Leave
left it open.
You left it open.
Yes.
So when you went back inside now to actually go up to your room, did you take something with you?
Yes.
What did you take?
The gun.
Now, had you ever done anything in addition to the gun after you would put the 2 rounds in the car on the way back from San Diego?
On Friday?
On any day before this point?
No.
So it was in whatever condition it was in when you first brought it home on Friday.
Yes.
And did you now take it up to your bedroom?
Yes.
And where did you put it?
Well, I put it on the side of my bed.
And can you see? Do you want to keep going on?
All right, if this is an appropriate time, you can,
You know what? Let me just do this one photograph.
All right.
Forget about it. Exhibit 258. Mr. Menendez, does this photograph of your bedroom show, at least sort of show, where it was you put the gun on the side of your bed that Saturday night?
Yes.
Why don't you do an arrow from the light part down? You did 2 arrows.
Yeah.
Okay. And these arrows point to like an overhang. This is a, what kind of bed is this?
There's a little It's a wooden bed. It's a wooden bed.
Yeah, what kind of mattress?
It used to be a water bed, but it had broken a long time before, and it's just a mattress inside.
It's a platform type bed, isn't it?
Yes.
And is there an overhang?
Yes, and that's why I kept the gun inside there.
Okay, so it's like sits on a platform and then part of it overhangs and you put the gun.
Sort of like this.
Sort of like this edge here, sort of like I'm putting the pen on the edge.
Yes.
Like this, sort of. Okay.
We should
Sort
see it
of
with
on
the
one
camera
drink.
angle.
See, that's why I'll put the pen on the other edge. Sort of like that.
Yes.
It sort of didn't fall off though when you had the gun there. Is that correct?
No.
It was actually on the floor. The gun sat on the floor under the ledge.
Yes.
This would be a good place.
All right, we'll take our recess until tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Again, don't discuss this case among yourselves or with anyone else. Don't form any final
All
opinions
right.
about it. And don't permit yourselves to be exposed to anything about this.
Don't permit yourselves to be exposed to anything about this. It's your fault if you're exposed. Anyhow, all right. Okay, so that is it for today. More heartbreaking testimony from Erik. It's been interesting to see the difference between Erik and Lyle, and the ways that they react to certain things. Erik so far has appeared to just be very, very tense on the stage. And I think that the popping noises on the microphone are due in part to him kind of hunching over as he's talking. And that kind of brings him closer to the mic rather than sitting up and kind of sitting back a little bit. I mean, it to me, it speaks to him being a little bit more tense and stressed. Not to say that Lyle was not stressed and tense on the stand as well, but he seemed to start off pretty stressed and sort of loosened up as he was talking. Here, he's really Erik has, on the other hand, has really maintained his stressfulness, it seems. Anyhow, fascinating stuff. Would love to hear your thoughts, whether in the chat or in the comments on replay, as always. And it's another episode. Here we go. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Thank you so much for being with me on this whole journey, whether you are watching this live or on replay. And thank you to everybody that's been engaging in the chat and commenting on these videos and liking the videos, and all those of you who have just been watching and lurking and whatnot. Yeah, and of course, thank you to all of the mods as well for helping to facilitate dialogue in the chat, because this is, like I say, almost every week. This is a case that people disagree on. We're all watching this together, and folks have some different opinions on the case. It'll be interesting to see where people end up at the end of this trial. We've gone so far into this case so far, but there's still more to come. Dater, can you compare Lyle and Erik's testimony thus far? I mean, they've got so many intersecting points. Everything is lined up in terms of like the facts that they're testifying to. And I mean, you can tell that Lyle has some more comfort in this situation for what I just realized this entire time my computer screen has been blocking part of my screen. Anyway, but you can tell that Lyle has a bit more confidence. He's got a bit more more of an ability to sort of relax on the stand. I think that part of that comes from the different treatment that they had throughout their lives, as well as, just in terms of like, one is the fair-haired child, one is like the golden boy, the other one is the one that no one cares about. But also, Erik also just endured more actual abuse for a longer period of time. So, anyway, but overall, it's interesting to see the way that they both are are coming across. I'm curious for everybody's thoughts on how Erik is coming across so far in terms of like emotion. I know I've been seeing that a little bit in the chat as well. And sincerity, all of that kind of stuff, credibility. So to me, everything so far fits with what we've heard up to this point. But those are my thoughts. Let's see. Oh, and here's a question that I'm sorry I didn't answer this before. WPS Uncooked, she can just ask the state a question in the middle of her client's direct. What she was asking about was, so Leslie had asked Erik about his tickets that he had previously gotten, and one of them was for driving without a license. So the reason why she turned to the state to ask them a question is because that can impact, how much time she takes on, what this infraction was, and having to like show to the jury, what that particular penal code statute was for. Rather than doing that, she could just turn to the state and say, do you guys stipulate that this law is the way that I'm characterizing it? Right? Okay, we all agree that this is the law that he broke when he got this particular ticket. And they said, yeah, that's fine. That's normal. That is something that you can do in the middle of a direct examination or a cross examination. It's similar to, introducing some evidence, in the middle of your direct or cross. Yeah. So that's entirely allowable and totally normal as well. Yes, exactly. It's a time saving kind of thing. So any time that you're stipulating to any bit of evidence, it's basically to save time and just sort of streamline the whole process. Okay. So that for me about does it. Thank you once again to everybody. Oh, and Indy's out of her chair, so I will just put this here. Thank you again to everybody. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Monday, wonderful rest of your week. Those of you who are in Bite Club, I will see you on Friday at our casual Friday members only live stream. And we've got another episode next Monday of Classic Trials. In between, I will be coming out with another pre-recorded video. And I hope you guys can keep an eye out for that one as well. That should be coming out as soon as possible. Okay. All right. That for me about does it. I'll see you guys in the next video.